Chapter 838. When Lu Ping saw the dozen or so cultivators gathered in front of his exhibition hut, he was shocked. He thought that these cultivators had come for the purple crystal royal jelly. However, Lu Ping immediately remembered that he had not placed the purple crystal royal jelly in the hut, and his identity had not been exposed. It was impossible for these people to know that he was the owner of the purple crystal royal jelly. Obviously, he had been caught in the act of the Tianxian sect, the Wuxing school, and the other four major sects. Lu Ping walked forward casually, pretending to be a cultivator who had been attracted by the crowd. When he got closer, he heard two cultivators discussing something in a low voice. Lu Ping saw that the two cultivators did not use any spells to transmit their voices. He stretched his neck and looked into the hut. At the same time, he spread his divine sense around the two cultivators. Soon, he heard their conversation. "Brother Luo, are you sure you are not mistaken?" "Absolutely. Those talismans are indeed restriction-breaking talismans. Moreover, there are 4 colors in them. They should be authentic 4-color restriction-breaking talismans. 4-color restriction-breaking talismans. If we have this thing, we can definitely break that formation. 1 talisman is not enough. If these 3 talismans are used together, there is still hope. Unless we can find a 5-color restriction-breaking talisman." 5-color restriction-breaking talisman? Those who can obtain authentic restriction-breaking talismans and make 5-color restriction-breaking talismans are all famous sects in the cultivation world. Why would they need to exchange 5-color restriction-breaking talismans for a spirit treasure? You are right. However, there are only 3 4-color restriction-breaking talismans here. Moreover, the exhibitor has clearly marked that a 4-color restriction-breaking talisman can be exchanged for a mid-grade earth spirit treasure. Moreover, it is a wood attribute spirit treasure. If we exchange all 3 talismans together, we will need a wood attribute high-grade earth spirit treasure. It is very valuable. If it's really able to deal with that restriction, then a mid-grade earth rank spirit treasure would absolutely be worth it. However, although we have a mid-grade earth spirit treasure, we do not have a wood attribute spirit treasure. Let's go and ask old Fan for it. I heard that he has a wood attribute spirit treasure. If we can exchange it, I will owe him a favor. You have a way. That's for the best. The exhibits in this hut are all rare. Now that so many people have gathered here, I wonder if there will be more people coming. Let's go quickly, in case someone else beats us to it. Old Fan is a shrewd man. I'm just afraid that he'll guess something and want a piece of the pie. When Lu Ping saw the 2 of them leaving in a hurry, he guessed that they were going to look for wood-type earth-grade phase. This made Lu Ping rather happy. This time, Lu Taohua's advancement to the mid-stage core forging realm was settled. It could be considered a good start. When Lu Ping turned around again, he saw a cultivator walking out from the crowd towards a jade bottle covered by a transparent barrier placed in the middle of the hut. At the bottom of the jade bottle, Lu Ping's note was clear: minor forging spirit pill, made from Mu forging spirit pill. It improves the quality of heaven and earth spirit treasures that a cultivator can refine. However, its effect is only a quarter of that of a real spirit forging pill, and each person can only take 3. There are only 3 minor forging spirit pills in this bottle. You can exchange for 3 mid-grade earth-grade spirit treasures or 1 high-grade earth-grade spirit treasure of any element. The cultivator paced back and forth in front of the transparent barrier for a moment. After a while, he finally made up his mind and took out 3 boxes that were tightly sealed with spirit sealing talismans from his storage magic tool. Under the expectant gazes of the crowd, the cultivator opened the 3 boxes one by one. Some of the more knowledgeable people in the crowd immediately handed over the names of the items in the boxes. Mid-grade earth-grade spirit treasure, wind-facing branch. This is soft jade steel, also mid-grade earth-grade. Glazed stone, earth-grade. The cultivator placed the 3 mid-grade earth-ranked spirit items on the stone platform where the jade bottles were placed. Lu Ping stood in the middle of the crowd and with a thought, the stone platform glowed brightly. When the light dimmed, the 3 spirit items were gone. The transparent barrier around the stone platform opened up, revealing the jade bottles containing the little forging spirit pellets. The cultivator picked up the jade bottle and walked out. Some of the cultivators in the crowd couldn't help but say, "Don't go. Are the things in the bottle real or fake? Don't tell me you've been fooled." The cultivator didn't stop. No matter how the cultivators in the crowd shouted and even cursed him, he didn't turn around and walked away without a trace. There were a few cultivators in the crowd who were tempted by Lu Ping's introduction of the minor forging spirit pills. However, they were worried that they would be fooled. It wasn't easy to wait for someone to come, but he was very cautious. After exchanging the minor forging spirit pills, he didn't even look at them and hurried away. It wasn't that there weren't any pills in the cultivation world that could increase the quality of a core forging cultivator's heaven and earth spirit treasures. According to Lu Ping's knowledge, there were no less than 10 types of pills. The only difference was the quality of the pills. Among these pills, the most famous one was the publicly recognized spirit forging pill of the Fei Ling sect. Unfortunately, this kind of pill was lost 4,000 years ago with the destruction of Fei Ling sect. Later, many cultivators tried to imitate the spirit forging pill, and some were able to refine a pill with 10% or 20% of the effect of the spirit forging pill. However, until now, there was no one in the cultivation world who was able to refine the spirit forging pill. Of course, the news of Lu Ping obtaining the complete recipe of the spirit forging pill and refining it had been sealed by Zhenling. Even in Zhenling, only a few Laozu knew about it. This minor forging spirit pill was created by Lu Ping using the vitality dew as a catalyst. It was a recipe that he had obtained from the last disciple of the Ying Tian sect, Laozu Qingjian. The minor forging spirit pill that was refined this way only had a quarter of the effect of the real spirit forging pill. 3 minor forging spirit pills added together couldn't compare to one real spirit forging pill. Even so, this minor forging spirit pill was considered an extraordinary existence in the cultivation world. One had to know that a complete spirit forging pill could allow a cultivator, who could originally only refine 1 low-grade heaven-level spirit item, to refine 2 low-grade heaven-level spirit items. The quality of the condensed golden core would be greatly improved. Although it wouldn't be able to reach the level of an 8th-grade golden core, it would at least give the cultivator a chance to break through to the mid-Dharma stage in the future. At that time, Guo Tianshan, Liang Tianfeng, and Chu Tiancheng could only refine 1 low-grade heaven-grade spiritual item and achieve the standard of an ordinary 7th-grade golden core. If they wanted to refine 2 low-grade heaven-grade spiritual items, the 3 of them would probably have to accumulate more than 100 years of hard work. It was because of the spirit forging pill that Lu Ping had brought out from Filing Mountain that the 3 of them could refine 2 low-grade heaven-level spirit items. It only took them a few decades to successfully condense their Dharma power. This also allowed the rise of Zhenling to be brought forward by 100 years. Lu Ping had once tried to improve the minor forging spirit pill and greatly improved its effect. However, because he later obtained the complete inheritance of the spirit forging pill, and because the spirit herbs used to improve the minor forging spirit pill were too expensive, compared to the complete spirit forging pill, the gains didn't make up for the losses. Therefore, this time, he didn't refine the improved minor forging spirit pill. Otherwise, it would have caused an even bigger uproar. In fact, the 5 Holy Lands and the Crystal Palace didn't have similar spirit pills. Moreover, for a cultivator to refine heaven and earth spirit items, it was probably even more effective than the minor forging spirit pill. It was comparable to the minor forging spirit pill that Lu Ping had improved. However, the price of exchanging for it was definitely higher. Just like Lu Ping's minor forging spirit pill, using a mid-grade earth spirit item to exchange for 1 minor forging spirit pill, the price was simply unimaginable. Spirit water meridian nurturing pill. What kind of pill is this? Does the cultivation world really have a method to refine pills with spirit water? A cultivator who clearly had a deep understanding of alchemy had been observing the 5 pills in a jade box placed on another stone platform. He was also carefully reading the label that Lu Ping had written on the bottom of the jade box. The spirit water meridian nurturing pill wasn't placed in a jade bottle like the minor forging spirit pill. Instead, Lu Ping had placed it in an open jade box. The cultivator could check the quality of the pill through a transparent barrier. For the 5 spirit water meridian nurturing pills, the price that Lu Ping had quoted was a high-grade earth spirit item. The Spirit Water Meridian Nurturing Pill was a holy healing pill. In terms of healing effects, it couldn't even compare to the Bell Cauldron pill that Lu Ping had placed on another platform. However, the magic of the Spirit Water Meridian Nurturing Pill was its long-lasting healing effect. During the healing process, it wouldn't cause any side effects to the already weak body of a seriously injured cultivator. Moreover, this pill had a very special effect on those who were on the verge of collapsing. The Soul Return Pill was a pill that most cultivators were familiar with. However, only Grandmaster-level alchemists were able to refine this kind of medicinal pill. This was because this medicinal pill used the soul-devouring crystal of devil cultivators as a medicinal guide. The soul-returning pill was also refined to target cultivators who had their spiritual sense severely damaged by the soul-devouring crystal of devil cultivators. As the calamity of Demon Luo approached, the resurrection pill became something that the world of cultivation urgently needed. However, demonic cultivators would usually self-destruct their soul-devouring crystals when they died. Thus, the soul-devouring crystals were extremely rare. Coupled with the fact that the resurrection pill was extremely difficult to concoct, the resurrection pill became quite valuable in the world of cultivation. When Lu Ping broke out of the western barren grasslands, he joined forces with sixth brother Lei, Samling, and Lu China to kill nearly 100 Mara. Among them, there were more than 10 demonic cultivators. However, the 9 soul-devouring crystals that Lu Ping obtained were obtained by killing demonic cultivators with a sneak attack. Unfortunately, the soul return pills that Lu Ping displayed were refined from the soul-devouring crystals of a demonic cultivator at the core forging stage. They could only heal cultivators who had been severely injured by the demonic cultivator's soul-devouring magic. If they encountered a cultivator who had been severely injured by the demonic cultivator's soul-devouring magic, then the soul return pills that Lu Ping refined would be of no help. Even so, these soul return pills still caused the cultivators present to become restless. This was because the price that Lu Ping had marked below each soul return pill was not high. One soul return pill could only be exchanged for a high-grade mystic-level spirit item. A mid-grade earth-level spirit item could be exchanged for all 9 soul return pills. Chapter 839. If it wasn't for the strict rules of the Profound Sky Sect, which required every participant to display at least 3 heaven and earth spirit items in their respective huts, and at least one of them had to be earth-grade, Lu Ping wouldn't have taken out his heaven and earth spirit items no matter what. In fact, Lu Ping's worries weren't unfounded. Among the 3 spirit items on display in the shop, only one was a low-grade earth spirit item that he obtained after Fan Yuqing's death. The other 2 were mystic spirit items that Lu Ping had previously acquired. One was a high-grade mystic spirit item, and the other was a mid-grade mystic spirit item. Even so, these 3 heaven and earth spirit items were exchanged for Lu Ping's marked items in half a day's time. These 3 heaven and earth spirit items brought to Lu Ping a mid-grade heaven and earth spirit item, a box of wolf venom tooth liquid, and 103,000-year spirit herbs. At the same time, this meant that Lu Ping had to display 3 heaven and earth spirit items on the second day in order to comply with the Profound Sky Sect's rules. Otherwise, Lu Ping would have no choice but to withdraw. In fact, it wasn't just Lu Ping. All the heaven and earth spirit items on display in the underground palace, if it wasn't for the fact that the items being exchanged were too rare, like the Profound Sky Sect using the spirit vein essence milk to exchange for the amethyst royal bee jelly. In other words, this spirit item exchange would last for 3 days. Most cultivators would have to prepare at least 9 heaven and earth spirit items to exchange for, and among these 9 heaven and earth spirit items, at least 3 had to be earth grade. After the first day of the trade fair, many cultivators were only able to trade for 1 or 2 heaven and earth spirit items. Many cultivators even returned empty-handed. As for the 3 spirit items in their own exhibition rooms, they were all sold. As a result, many cultivators with low wealth lost the qualifications to stay in the underground palace. However, the number of cultivators participating in the trade fair on the second day did not decrease. At that moment, there was no telling how many cultivators were still participating in the trade fair in Arcane Sky Ancient City. Naturally, the disqualified cultivators would be replaced by other cultivators. On the first day, Lu Ping didn't take the initiative to trade for any phase. Even so, the restriction-breaking talisman, minor forge spirit elixir, spirit water meridian nourishing elixir, soul return elixir, and other items were all displayed in the exhibition room. Lu Ping managed to trade for 8 earth phase. Among them, there were 3 low-grade earth phase, 4 mid-grade earth phase, and 1 high-grade earth phase. The other items on display, such as cultivation pills, 3 years prolonging life pills, spiritual treasures that he had no use for, some low-grade natural oddities, second-grade mutated spiritual materials, and so on, were the spoils of war that Lu Ping had obtained from the cultivators that he had slain over the years. Because Lu Ping had no use for most of them, he took them out to trade. However, there were only a few people interested in these items. Only the 3 years prolonging life pills and 2 spiritual treasures were exchanged for a few mystic phase, which was considered better than nothing. However, Lu Ping had ingeniously placed 400 high-grade spirit stones on a stone table. He stated that he wanted to trade for a mid-grade earth phase. He didn't expect that someone would actually use a mid-grade earth phase, rainbow water to trade for these 400 high-grade spirit stones. This caused Lu Ping to be pleasantly surprised. On the second day, Lu Ping had obtained the complete restriction-breaking talisman inheritance from the Surplus Heavens faction during this period of time. He had only managed to create 10 restriction-breaking talismans. Apart from the 3 4-colored restriction-breaking talismans that were exchanged on the first day, he took out the remaining 7 restriction-breaking talismans. Of these 7 restriction-breaking talismans, 4 were 3-colored restriction-breaking talismans, and the remaining 3 were 4-colored restriction-breaking talismans. They were used to trade for a low-grade earth phase and a mid-grade earth phase. There were only 7 small forging spirit pills left, but Lu Ping felt that he had suffered a loss the day before. Therefore, this time, he directly called for a low-grade heaven phase. The small forging spirit pills required a lot of 3,000-year spirit herbs. In the past few years, Lu Ping had been accumulating 3,000-year spirit herbs for when he entered the transcendent stage. In addition, Lu Ping had already mastered the method of making the spirit forging pill. Therefore, he did not deliberately make the small forging spirit pills. The spiritual water cultivating pill was still 5 pills, and the price was 1 high-grade earth phase. He didn't know if anyone would be interested in the spiritual water cultivating pill. Without the soul-devouring crystal, naturally, there would be no more soul-returning pills. However, after some thought, Lu Ping took out an incense burner from his storage ring. That year, when Lu Ping had first used the teleporter from the North Sea to the Middle Earth, he had first obtained 31 pieces of calming soul incense from the Clear Stream Cave. Then, he had obtained this incense burner from the Surplus Heavens Temple. There were 25 pieces of calming soul incense, 20 pieces of calming soul incense, and 12 pieces of the most precious soul-nourishing incense. After that, he had obtained 12 pieces of towering soul trees from the winter space of the Surplus Heavens Ancient Mirror, which were used to make these 3 types of precious incense. These 3 types of incense were recognized as the top 3 in the world of practice. The calming soul incense was the lowest, and the soul-nourishing incense was the most precious. However, even the most inferior calming soul incense was a famous luxury item in the world of practice. Only Dharma adepts could afford it. Lu Ping opened a drawer under the incense burner. There were 47 pieces of calming soul incense in it. Originally, there were 25 pieces in the drawer. Including the 31 pieces that he had obtained from the Clear Stream Cave, there were 56 pieces in total. However, over the years, Lu Ping had intermittently used up 8 or 9 pieces in the process of his closed-door training. Lu Ping directly took out 20 pieces from the drawer and placed them on the stone platform. He then activated the protective shield. The label stated, "Calming Soul Incense, made from the branches of the towering soul tree, mixed with mid-grade soul-nourishing wood, and other precious materials. Once lit, it can calm the mind and chi, nourish the soul, and cultivate Dharma power. It is an essential item for closed-door training and understanding of remarkable techniques." Willing to exchange for a low-grade heaven-level spiritual item, Lu Ping did not think that using 20 pieces of incense to exchange for a low-grade heaven-level spiritual item was too much of an exaggeration. In fact, From the jade scroll that Lu Ping had obtained from the surplus Heavens Temple, it was clearly stated that only Dharma adepts could truly bring out the full potential of these 3 types of incense. Therefore, when Lu Ping placed these 20 pieces of calming soul incense on the stone platform, it did not attract core forging adepts, but rather the Dharma adepts, Laozu. After rearranging his own booth, Lu Ping hurriedly left the small exhibition house. This time, Lu Ping was going to take the initiative. He believed that by the next day, the various sects would also be bringing out some valuable heaven and earth spirit items. Hopefully, the conditions for exchange for these heaven and earth spirit items would not be too harsh. After Lu Ping no longer planned to bring out the purple crystal royal jelly, which was equivalent to the all-purpose essence oil, if he wanted to compete with others for these valuable heaven and earth spirit items, Lu Ping really did not have the confidence to win. However, if the conditions for exchange were really relaxed, then the number of cultivators who matched the conditions would definitely increase. In this way, the heaven and earth spirit items that Lu Ping wanted would definitely become more difficult. With such a contradictory mentality, Lu Ping wandered around the various exhibition houses, searching for the heaven and earth spirit items that matched his expectations. Originally, Lu Ping's plan was to go to the pavilion in the center of the underground palace to take a look. Although Lu Ping no longer had the intention to exchange for the Thunder Punishment Aqua, these sects from the sacred grounds still had a lot of good things besides the Thunder Punishment Aqua. However, just as Lu Ping passed by a small house, he could not help but stop in his tracks. In front of the small house stood 4 to 5 cultivators. Initially, Lu Ping did not pay much attention to them. However, just as Lu Ping was about to miss them, he suddenly realized that these 4 or 5 cultivators were actually Dharma adepts, Laozu. Although Lu Ping's divine will could not detect the identity or cultivation level of these people, the Dharma adepts could not hide their aura. Lu Ping's actions had obviously attracted the attention of the 4 or 5 people in front of the small house. A few of them turned to look at Lu Ping and did not pay much attention to him. Lu Ping simply walked over, not caring about their surprised, cold, or disdainful gazes. He directly began to look at the furnishings in the small house. The furnishings in the small house were extremely simple. 2 low-grade mystic spirit items were placed on one side, and on the other side, a low-grade earth spirit item had already been exchanged for. The owner of this small house was obviously very strict with the minimum requirements that the Tianxian sect had set for this spirit item trade fair. However, in this small house, the thing that really attracted Lu Ping's attention was a spirit flower that was placed on a stone table in the corner. The skeleton flower usually grew on ancient battlefields that were more than 1,000 years old. It was a type of spirit medicine that could increase the strength of a cultivator's physical body, especially for Dharma adepts. It also had the effect of cleaning up a cultivator's blood vessels, healing hidden injuries, and nurturing Dharma power. The skeleton flower could be said to be the main ingredient that Dharma adepts use to increase the strength of their bodies. When Lu Ping refined the spirit water nourishing pill for Wu Tianxing of the spirit beast sect, Laozu, the main ingredient was the skeleton flower. The quality of the skeleton flower depended on the color of its petals. The longer the flower grew and bloomed, the more petals it had, and the more vibrant the color was. This skeleton flower had a total of 18 petals, and the color was as red as blood. It was full of spirit qi, which was a sign that the flower had bloomed for more than 1,800 years. The elixir refined from it could even increase the strength of a mid-Dharma adept's physical body. It was no wonder that it could attract the 5 Dharma adepts, Laozu, here. Lu Ping had a pure jade fruit that he had obtained from the fallen secret land. It was also a spirit medicine that could increase the strength of one's physical body. However, compared to this skeleton flower, it was a notch lower. Furthermore, this skeleton flower was as red as blood. The spirit water nourishing pill, which was refined using the spirit water nourishing pill, was mainly used to increase the strength of a cultivator's bones. This was the hardest part of improving a cultivator's physical body. Among the few treasures that Lu Ping had collected that could increase the strength of the body, only the roots and lotus seeds of the level 9 white jade lotus were better than this skeleton flower. It was just that none of the 5 Laozu had made a move to exchange for this item. It seemed that the sign that the owner of the hut had set up was either extremely unreasonable, Or it was something that even the 5 Laozu could not do anything about. Lu Ping bent down and looked at the label at the bottom of the flower. He couldn't help but be startled when he saw the words written on the label: 1,800-year-old blood skeleton flower, a spirit herb that can enhance one's physique. Can be exchanged for 12 drops of wonder dew. No wonder. Chapter 840. Since the last time when the female cultivator of the green sea snakes, Chu Hailan, secretly used her natal snake venom to plot against Lu Ping, but it was dissolved by Lu Ping's myriad meteoric poison aura shield, Lu Ping began to pay attention to how to improve the quality of the myriad meteoric poison aura shield. Speaking of which, Lu Ping had already condensed 8 kinds of aura shields. As long as he condensed 9 kinds, he would be able to combine them into one and achieve the true Heaven Water Curtain Protection great magical ability. However, if he wanted to fuse all 9 kinds of aura shields, he would need to choose the most powerful aura shields as the main body to fuse. Only in this way could he ensure that after the successful smelting, the Heaven Water Curtain Protection great magical ability would be able to maximize its power. Among the 8 kinds of aura shields that Lu Ping had smelted, the one with the highest quality was undoubtedly the myriad meteoric poison aura shield. Moreover, the most valuable thing was that the myriad poison serum was known as the mother of all poisons. It could fuse all the poisons in the world into one furnace, and the quality of the myriad meteoric poison aura shield formed by the myriad poison serum could also be continuously improved by refining the poisons. On the first day of the spiritual item exchange, Lu Ping had once used a mid-grade profound rank spiritual item to exchange for a box of wolf venom tooth fluid. This wolf venom tooth fluid actually had nothing to do with wolves. It was a plant that grew in the scorching desert of the southwest. Because its shape was similar to a wolf's tooth, it was called wolf tooth fern. Whenever it was the hottest time of the day in the desert, the wolf fang fern would secrete a translucent but sticky liquid. This liquid was an extremely famous poison in the cultivation world. This was the wolf fang venom. The reason why Lu Ping exchanged for this venom was to improve the quality of the myriad meteoric poison aura shield. It was to prepare for using the myriad meteoric poison aura shield as the main body of the Heaven Water Curtain Protection great magical ability in the future. In fact, there was no need for so much wolf fang venom to improve his aura chi. Lu Ping exchanged for it to nourish the myriad poison paste, and the purpose of nourishing the myriad poison paste was for the myriad wonder jade nectar that was condensed in the myriad poison paste. After Lu Ping had smelted a world spiritual object for the second time, only 3/4 of the wonder jade nectar was left in the myriad poison paste. Afterwards, Lu Ping had been running around everywhere, but he had rarely collected things like poisons. If he wanted to nourish the wonder jade nectar, then he would need to fuse more highly toxic things with the myriad poison paste. Lu Ping looked at the blood-red skull flower in front of him and thought to himself. If he were to use 12 drops of myriad wonder jade nectar to exchange for this thing, it might not be worth it in the eyes of others, but it wouldn't be a loss in the long run. This was especially so for a practitioner like Lu Ping, who had already smelted the myriad wonder jade nectar and still had some left. Furthermore, he could continuously obtain more myriad wonder jade nectar through the myriad poison paste. This skull flower had become a treasure that could only be found by luck. In fact, the other Dharma adepts standing in front of the small house had similar thoughts. Although they did not have the myriad wonder jade nectar, the myriad wonder jade nectar only had 2 effects for them at this time: prolonging their lifespan and healing injuries. However, for these Dharma adepts, sometimes prolonging their lifespan was not important. What was more important was the lightning that came before their lifespan was up. If they could not survive the lightning, it would be a waste no matter how much myriad wonder jade nectar they consumed to prolong their lifespan. It was a pity that they clearly did not have the myriad wonder jade nectar on hand. Even if they had a few drops, they would not be able to reach the 12 drops of myriad wonder jade nectar that were marked by the exhibitors. Otherwise, Lu Ping believed that these practitioners would definitely not be stingy with their 12 drops of myriad wonder jade nectar in exchange for this skull flower. Lu Ping raised his head and looked behind him. Only then did he realize that 2 more practitioners had arrived in front of the small house. From afar, it seemed that there were 2 more practitioners who had received the news and were rushing over. Furthermore, These practitioners did not hide their auras at all. Their Dharma power was Laozu. Although the myriad wonder jade nectar was rare, it was hard to guarantee that Laozu did not have it on him. The reason why he did not exchange for it was probably because he did not have 12 drops of myriad wonder jade nectar on hand. Once these Laozu compromised, it was hard to guarantee that they would not join forces to buy the skull flower first. Then, they would invite an alchemy grandmaster to refine it into a pill and then divide it among themselves. The opportunity was fleeting. Lu Ping no longer had any scruples about these Dharma power Laozu. He immediately opened a small portal from his sleeve and reached into the golden house to fiddle with it. Then, he took out a jade essence bottle. Under the fiery gazes of the Dharma power Laozu behind him, he opened the jade essence bottle. The mouth of the bottle shone towards the transparent shield. The jade essence bottle disappeared and the entire shield began to dissipate. Lu Ping held the skull flower in his hand. Finally, he heard someone behind him say, "Fellow Daoist, please wait." Lu Ping turned a deaf ear to it. His other hand had already taken out a jade box. After opening it, he was about to put the skull flower inside. A gust of cold wind came from behind him. Lu Ping stretched out his palm and waved it behind him. A ray of sword qi rushed out from his palm. The sword qi and the cold wind collided but dissipated into nothing. Lu Ping's body swayed a little, but he still managed to stand firm. A cultivator outside the small house let out a sound of surprise. The dissipating cold wind made his clothes flutter, but his body did not move in the slightest. Not only the cultivator who had made the move, but the other cultivators who were watching were also shocked. Although there was a concealment matrix set up by the Taishen sect to keep the identities of the cultivators in the underground palace a secret, this did not prevent the cultivators from judging the approximate level of cultivation of each other. It was just like how when Lu Ping saw these people, he had determined that they were Dharma adepts. When the few Laozu saw that a core forging stage cultivator had swaggered away with a treasure that they wanted but could not have, they could not help but feel an indescribable feeling in their hearts. Especially when they saw Lu Ping easily take out 12 drops of the Wonder Dew, this feeling became even stronger. After blocking this sneak attack, Lu Ping had already taken the opportunity to stick a spirit sealing talisman on the jade box. Then, he threw it through the space portal in his sleeve into the House of Gold. With the treasure in hand, Lu Ping's heart relaxed a little. He then turned around to look at the cultivator who had just attacked him and said, "Fellow Daoist, what do you mean? Could it be that the rules set by the Taishen sect are like child's play in your eyes? The rules of the Tianxian sect are naturally not child's play." A voice suddenly rang out, and then a space portal opened. Qing Li Laozu had already walked out from inside, and his gaze swept coldly over the cultivators, including Lu Ping. Although they knew that this gaze had not seen through their identities, the aura of a great cultivator still shocked everyone present. Qing Li Laozu glanced at Lu Ping, then turned his gaze back to the cultivator who had attacked Lu Ping. He said, "The Tianxian sect has set up a matrix in this underground palace. As long as there is a fight between cultivators, it will be immediately detected. Please do not make a mistake." Lu Ping bowed slightly and thanked him. "Thank you, Senior. I will take my leave now." Lu Ping did not want to stay here any longer. If he stayed too long, there was no guarantee that Qing Li Laozu would not be able to discover his identity. So, after thanking Qing Li Laozu, he was about to leave. He believed that at this time, with Qing Li Laozu present, the other Laozu would not dare to make things difficult for him, even if they were unwilling. Seeing that Lu Ping was about to leave, the Laozu who had attacked Lu Ping earlier moved slightly. He felt an overwhelming pressure that scared him out of his wits. When he looked up, he saw that Qing Li Laozu was looking at him disdainfully, as if he was waiting for him to show off his power. The cultivator's throat moved, but in the end, he did not have the guts to stop him. Instead, the other Laozu said, "Fellow cultivator, please wait." Seeing the Qing Li patriarch's gaze on him, the cultivator hurriedly said, "We have no ill intentions. It's just that this skeleton flower is too precious. This fellow Daoist acted too hastily in a moment of desperation. Please forgive us." This Laozu saw that Qing Li Laozu was surprised after hearing about the skeleton flower. He laughed and said, "This skeleton flower is blood red, it is clearly a top treasure. If you want to refine it into a pill, you must have a master alchemist." Coincidentally, the old man knows two master alchemists. If you don't mind, the old man can introduce you. Of course, the old man and the others will not deny that we also want a share of the pill refined from this skeleton flower. However, we will naturally pay the appropriate price and will not let you suffer a loss. After this Laozu finished speaking, he looked at Qing Li Laozu and said, "If fellow cultivator is worried, we can let senior Qing Li be the middleman. What do you think?" Lu Ping looked at Qing Li Laozu and didn't speak. This Laozu was obviously trying to drag Laozu Qing Li into this. Since they wanted a grand cultivator to be the middleman, they naturally had to pay a high price. At the very least, they had to have one of the pills refined. Sure enough, Qing Li Laozu pondered for a moment and said, "If fellow cultivator is interested, then the old man can be the middleman. If fellow cultivator is still worried, then my mysterious sky sect has an alchemist who will not allow your pill to go to waste." Laozu felt bitter in his heart. He expected Qing Li Laozu to agree, but he didn't expect Qing Li Laozu to involve his sect's alchemist. This way, the mysterious sky sect would naturally get more benefits. However, the people here didn't dare to say anything in front of Qing Li Laozu. They all looked at Lu Ping. Lu Ping stood there and pondered for a moment. Then, he suddenly laughed in a low voice. His clothes suddenly fluttered and a medicinal aroma immediately filled the air within a radius of 100 feet. Every alchemist would more or less collect the pill fragrance emitted when the pill left the furnace after a successful alchemy. This was because the pill fragrance was the dispersal of the alchemy essence. If an alchemist collected this pill fragrance, over time, not only could it promote the growth of their cultivation, but it could also be used to form some incredible magical abilities. Although it could not be compared to those used in life and death battles, it often had unexpected uses. The number of pill fragrances collected by an alchemist and the quality of the fragrances often represented the level of the alchemist's alchemy skills. Although the pill fragrance from Lu Ping's body was fleeting, how could an ordinary alchemist collect such a mellow and long-lasting pill fragrance? In the eyes of these old monsters who had lived for thousands of years, it only took a moment for them to confirm that this core forging cultivator was an alchemist. In an instant, everyone, including Qing Li Laozu, looked at Lu Ping with a trace of respect. Chapter 841. As long as an alchemist had the status of a grandmaster, no matter how high or low his cultivation level was, he would have the qualifications to be on equal footing with Dharma adepts in the cultivation world. Lu Ping's identity as an alchemist grandmaster was revealed through the pill fragrance that was condensed on his body. No one, including Qing Li and Laozu, spoke a word. They could only watch as Lu Ping disappeared behind the small house in the distance and blended into the crowd of cultivators. Lu Ping's divine sense carefully combed through his body, including his black clothes and cloak. He found that there were no secret marks or secret techniques left on his body. Only then did he feel relieved and began to browse the rare treasures in the small houses on both sides. Lu Ping first used 2 mystic mid-grade phase to exchange for 4 types of extremely famous poisons in the cultivation world. This time, he used 12 drops of wonder dew to exchange for the skeleton flower. Lu Ping did not have much wonder dew left in the myriad poison serum. He needed to use more poisons to fuse with the myriad poison serum. At the same time, it could be used to upgrade the myriad poison meteorite energy shield. It could be considered killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Immediately after, Lu Ping found a bottle of green sea snake venom in the Crystal Palace. The price was actually a low-grade earth-grade fey. Lu Ping could see that this was the life venom of a wood-type spirit snake that had reached the Dharma stage. The Crystal Palace and the green sea snake were the 2 major hostile forces in the East Sea. It was not surprising to see the venom of the green sea snake in the Crystal Palace. Using an earth-grade fey to exchange for the green sea snake venom, Lu Ping found that the 4 drops of thunder calamity water in the Crystal Palace still needed to be exchanged with the purple crystal royal jelly. Thus, he did not bother with it anymore. Out of the Crystal Palace, Lu Ping quickly found that he was actually being followed. However, to Lu Ping's surprise, the person following Lu Ping didn't seem to hide his tracks. He just followed behind Lu Ping at a distance of 30 feet. Now that he knew that the Profound Sky sect had set up a formation in the underground palace that could appear at any time to stop disputes between cultivators, Lu Ping did not fear that the people following him would have any evil intentions. After arriving at a secluded place, Lu Ping saw 5 people on his left and right, so he turned around and looked at the people who had been following him from outside the Crystal Palace. The person who was following him hesitated for a moment and then walked towards Lu Ping. From the person's figure and aura, Lu Ping quickly determined that the person was a Dharma adept. Although the Profound Sky sect's formation was a deterrent, Lu Ping did not dare to be careless. Who knew if the person in front of him was one of the Dharma adepts that Lu Ping had met when he was exchanging for the skull flower? If that was the case, this person's methods would cause Lu Ping to be alarmed. Previously, Lu Ping had carefully checked his entire body, but he did not find any secret marks or anything like that left behind. So how did this person discover him? You exchanged for a portion of the green sea snake's natal snake venom in the Crystal Palace? The person who had come was straightforward and spoke with a woman's voice. She walked in front of Lu Ping and spoke to Lu Ping. The body that was hidden behind the black cloak gave Lu Ping a strong feeling. It was as if the person in front of him was a poisonous snake hidden behind the cloak, looking for an opportunity to bite him at any time. Lu Ping did not know how this person knew that he had the green sea snake venom in his body. However, the person who came was obviously not the practitioner who had coveted the skull flower. Lu Ping did not deny it, but nodded and said in a low voice, "That's right. How did you know? Do you want to care about this? I want this snake venom. Name a price. Are you going to use a spiritual item or something else?" The practitioner said coldly. Lu Ping seemed to be staring at her through the cloak, but he did not say anything. After a while, the practitioner in front of him was indeed at a loss. When she opened her mouth again, there was some impatience in her tone. She said, "I know that you used a low-grade Earth-level spiritual item to exchange for the snake venom. How about a mid-grade Earth-level spiritual item?" Lu Ping suddenly said, "You are Chu Hailan?" After entering the underground palace, every cultivator wore black clothes that covered their figures. In order to avoid being recognized, cultivators naturally did not use their own voices to talk. However, Lu Ping was confident that the person in front of him was the female cultivator of the fire snake sect, Chu Hailan, whom he had met in the dense forest that day. Sure enough, the cultivator whose identity had been exposed by Lu Ping was shocked. Then, he sneered and said, "So you are the North Sea cultivator in the dense forest, Lu Shenping. It's really a small world." Lu Ping smiled silently and said, "You are quite capable. You were actually able to sneak in here without being discovered by the cultivators of the Heavenly Mystery sect. It's none of your business." Lu Ping did not take it seriously. He just continued to say, "If I were you, I would not reveal the demon transformation bracelet on my wrist outside my sleeve." Fortunately, the cultivators of the Heavenly Mystery sect you met did not recognize this treasure of the Spirit Beast sect. However, are you not afraid that I will reveal your identity? How dare you come here to make a deal with me? Chu Hailan moved and covered the silver bracelet on her wrist with her clothes. Then, she giggled and said, "Well, you can tell others. Don't forget, if worse comes to worst, I will also publicize the fact that you adopted the green sea snake." Lu Ping felt a little funny and said, "Well, I want to see if you, the spirit snake demon cultivator, will die first or if I will be found first." Chu Hailan snorted coldly and said no more. Then, she heard Lu Ping said, "You came here following the aura of the natal snake venom?" Chu Hailan said in a low voice, "Yes." Lu Ping nodded and said, "The natal snake venom seems to be very important to you. However, the Crystal Tower does not prevent all the cultivators from entering and exiting. Since you can enter the underground palace, why don't you go and exchange for it?" Chu Hailan seemed to be tired of Lu Ping's constant questions. However, now that she had something to ask of Lu Ping, she had to be patient and let Lu Ping ask questions. The Crystal Palace and the Green Sea Snakes have been blood enemies for generations. They have a secret treasure that can easily discover my identity within a certain distance. Oh, Lu Ping said, I see. It seems that you attach great importance to the natal snake venom of the green sea snake, and you can use some special means to determine its location. Well, in this case, you followed the cultivators of the Crystal Palace all the way to the middle mainland without being discovered. It must be because of this natal snake venom, right? Chu Hailan said impatiently, since you already know, why are you still asking me? Tell me, do you want to exchange for the venom or not? Lu Ping smiled silently and said, I just want to confirm it. But you also know that my protective gang qi is the innumerable poison meteorite power gang. The enhancement of this gang qi requires all kinds of poisons. This natal snake venom is very useful to me, a middle-grade earth rank spiritual item. Chu Hailan interrupted Lu Ping and said resolutely. Unexpectedly, Lu Ping shook his head with a smile. Chu Hailan's face changed, and she said, 2 middle-grade earth rank spiritual items. Lu Xianping, don't be greedy. You should know that this venom can only enhance the strength of your gang qi at most. It won't enhance the grade of the innumerable poison meteorite power gang. You can find a venom with a higher essence. Lu Ping laughed and said, when did I say that I won't exchange with you? Chu Hailan's face relaxed, and then she became vigilant again. She said, what do you want? Lu Ping took out the bottle of venom from his storage celestial device and said, how about we split this bottle of venom equally? Chu Hailan's expression changed indeterminately, and she seemed to be struggling in her heart. After a short moment, she said, all right, what do you want? Could it be that you want to give me half a bottle for free? Lu Ping withdrew another jade bottle from his storage celestial device, and he evenly divided the venom into 2 before Chu Hailan. After that, he raised his head to look at Chu Hailan and said, of course I won't give it to you for free. It's easy if you want this half of the venom. You just have to exchange it with half of your own venom. Chu Hailan came to a sudden understanding, and she chuckled. So that's what you're thinking. There really isn't a need for so many of the same venom to improve the innumerable poison meteorite power. You'll be able to obtain 2 types of venom if you share the excess. Lu Ping waved the jade bottle in his hand. Chu Hailan immediately understood what he meant, and she withdrew a jade bottle from her storage celestial device as well. The jade bottle contained her own venom. The 2 of them threw the jade bottles in their hands to each other. Chu Hailan opened the jade bottle, and after confirming that there was no mistake, she said, thank you very much. See you later. Seeing that she was about to turn around and leave, Lu Ping suddenly asked, this venom is very important to you. If it's just for a portion of the venom, why did you chase the practitioners of the Crystal Palace from the East Sea to the central region? Chu Hailan's body stiffened, and then she walked forward again. She said, this is my husband's venom, the only thing he left in the world. He was killed by the direct disciple of the Crystal Palace, Huang Shijun, and Huang Shijun is one of the envoys sent by the Crystal Palace to the Tianxian sect. Looking at Chu Hailan's back, Lu Ping suddenly became extremely lonely and heavy after saying these words, which was quite different from the female practitioner of the Beastkin clan who laughed freely in the jungle. He couldn't help but smile, and then he turned around and walked in the opposite direction. After a whole day, Lu Ping's harvest was not small. In addition to a skull flower and 2 halves of the top-rank Beastkin clan's venom, Lu Ping also exchanged 2 earth-rank spiritual objects for 2 water attribute natural oddities. The quality of these 2 kinds of natural oddities had reached above the middle grade. One was used by Lu Ping to refine his 9th protective aura, and the other was prepared for the 3 pure true pupils. As for the phase, there were only a few. He only used some of the spoils of war that he had no use for before to exchange for 7 or 8 mystic, mid-grade, and high-grade phase. As for the earth-rank spiritual objects, there was no need to mention the heaven-rank spiritual objects. The evening bell of the Tianxian sect rang, and the cultivators in the underground palace began to return to their respective exhibition huts. In another 2 hours, the underground palace would be under curfew. Those who needed to trade with each other agreed on a time and a code word, and they would continue the trade the next day without revealing their identities. When Lu Ping returned to his hut, he saw 3 cultivators standing in front of the hut. They were standing in front of the hut, and Lu Ping couldn't see his harvest for the day. Moreover, the three of them didn't look like they were trading in the hut. It seemed like they had specially come to discuss business with Lu Ping. Lu Ping raised his vigilance just in case, but he still walked over and said, "The curfew is about to begin. If you have any other needs, please come back tomorrow." Chapter 842. Once Lu Ping finished speaking, not only did the three of them not leave, they even turned to look at him. Although they had black cloaks covering their faces, Lu Ping could still feel their intense gazes. Lu Ping frowned. At this moment, he realized that the three people in front of him were not from the same group. The two on the left seemed to know each other, and they were both at the Transcendence realm. Their cloaks fluttered without any wind, and they seemed to be discussing something. The person on the right had a much weaker aura, and he should be a core forging realm cultivator, but he seemed to be hesitating about something. When Lu Ping saw that the three of them were not talking, he walked towards his exhibition. At this moment, he saw that most of the most important items that he had visited today had disappeared. He couldn't help but feel happy. It seemed that his harvest was not bad. At this moment, the friar on the right suddenly said, "Island Lord Huang Li?" Hearing this name, Lu Ping was startled. He managed Huang Li Island independently, and he turned a small island into a fortress for Zhenling to wedge itself into the demon race's territory. Whether it was within Zhenling or in the North Sea cultivation world, the Water Sword Immortal's reputation was very famous. However, many of Lu Ping's friends from the same sect called him Island Lord Huang Li. The newcomer addressed him as Island Master Huang Li, clearly a test. This meant that the newcomer wasn't sure if the owner of the hut was Lu Ping. However, this confirmed Lu Ping's suspicions that the newcomer was a fellow disciple of Zhenling's sect. In that case, he should be from Yingshan Immortal Courtyard. This time, the person from Yingshan Immortal Academy who came to Mysterious Sky City was enlightened Shen. Lu Ping had seen him before, so Lu Ping thought for a moment and asked, "Carefree?" Enlightened Shen was the eldest disciple of Tianlin Laozu. Tianlin Laozu and Feng Shudao were known as the North Sea Twins, and he was also known as the Carefree Child. He built Carefree Palace in Zhenling, and his disciples were also known as the Carefree lineage. Yes, the newcomer had obviously confirmed Lu Ping's identity. He heaved a long sigh of relief and immediately relaxed. Lu Ping glanced at the two on the left and said to Shentian Zhanren, "Let's talk inside." Daoist Master Shentian nodded and walked towards the hut with Lu Ping. The two people on the left had originally come for Lu Ping, but when they saw Lu Ping and Master Xuantian's conversation, which was like a code word, and actually confirmed each other's identities, they hesitated. Seeing that Lu Ping was about to enter the house, one of the two people on the left couldn't hold it in any longer. He coughed lightly and said, "But Brother Lu is here." Lu Ping's expression sank when he heard this. Previously, although Daoist Master Shentian had confirmed each other's identities, others would only be confused. However, these two people in front of him used some unknown method to confirm Lu Ping's identity and called him out openly. Although there were millions of people with the surname Lu in the world, this action of the other party still made Lu Ping dissatisfied. Although the cloak covered their faces, the person who spoke could still sense that Lu Ping's expression was definitely not good, so he hurriedly said, "Don't misunderstand, they are two old friends from Western Desolation." Lu Ping's heart moved, and he indifferently said, "Please come in." After entering the house, Lu Ping let the three people casually do as they pleased. Then he began to check the harvest of today's items. As expected, the 3 heaven and earth spirit items that Lu Ping had put out had already been exchanged. He now had a few more poisons and a batch of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. At the very least, Lu Ping had collected back the 3,000-year-old spirit herbs he had used to refine the 10 small forged spirit pills, and he still had a lot left. Authentic restriction-breaking talismans were naturally rare items. Many cultivators would think of ways to obtain 1 or 2, even if they couldn't use them at the time. In this day and age, who didn't want to have a lucky encounter? 4 3-colored and 3 4-colored restriction-breaking talismans were exchanged for 1 mid-grade and 1 high-grade earth spirit item for Lu Ping. Lu Ping wasn't worried about the minor forging spirit pellet either. No one would miss out on a minor forging spirit pellet just because they cherished a low-grade heaven-grade spirit item. Unless, of course, they had a medicinal pellet that was even more precious than the minor forging spirit pellet. Moreover, if Lu Ping's guess was correct, the reason why Shentian Daoist was able to find this place was probably because of the small forged spirit pill. After all, only the 3 alchemy grandmasters of Zhenling could refine small forged spirit pills, and at this time, only Lu Ping was in the central region. As for the purple crystal royal jelly, although Lu Zilan was also a wood elemental demon, Lu Ping no longer had any hope of encountering a spirit herb paradise like the Longhuai ancestors. Without the support of a large-scale spirit herb garden, Lu Zilan might not even be able to reach the mid-core forging stage. The spiritual water meridian nourishing pill was somewhat unexpected for Lu Ping. Originally, he thought that it would be easy to exchange 5 spiritual water meridian nourishing pills for a high-grade earth spirit item. After all, it was one of the best healing pills. He didn't expect that no one would be interested in it. Could it be that the price of a high-grade earth spirit item was too high? On the other hand, the soul-stabilizing incense made Lu Ping's eyes light up. At that time, Lu Ping had hardened his heart and set a high price. He thought that unless he met an elegant and generous Dharma adept, it would be difficult to exchange 20 pieces of soul-stabilizing incense for a low-grade heaven spirit item. In fact, Lu Ping had already prepared for the 20 pieces of soul-stabilizing incense to be ignored. In the end, he didn't expect that a low-grade heaven spirit item would be placed under the stone table where the soul-stabilizing incense had been placed. Lu Ping put away the 2 heaven-grade spirit items and the high-grade earth spirit item. Then, he put away the other mystic-grade spirit items that he had exchanged for the other items. Only then did he slowly walk towards the 3 of them. Lu Ping, who came later, smiled and said, "Congratulations, Brother Lu. Are you free now? Let's talk in private." As he said this, he glanced at Shentian Zhenren, who had come in with Lu Ping, obviously trying to avoid him. Seeing this, Shentian Zhenren smiled and stood up. "I'll take a look around first." Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Seeing that Shentian Zhenren had left, the 2 of them took off their cloaks. They were Xie Tianyang and Sang Yu. Opposite them, Lu Ping also took off his own cloak. Xie Tianyang flicked the cloak and said, "If it wasn't for the fact that I was afraid of bringing you trouble, I wouldn't have brought this out." Lu Ping smiled and said, "You're from the Purple Sun Palace, a direct disciple of the Middle Earth's sacred ground. As a true direct disciple, there's no need for you to hide. We all have to think about our own lives. After all, we don't have a sacred ground backing us." Xie Tianyang snickered. "That's true. At the very least, who knows how many cultivators in this underground palace are paying attention to the owner of the purple crystal royal jelly. The other holy lands and the profound sky sect have already set up a trap. I originally wanted to inform you, but I didn't know how to find you. Later, I thought that with your cautiousness, you would definitely find something wrong. Sure enough, 2 days have passed, and the purple crystal royal jelly hasn't appeared. I'm afraid the person who set up the trap can't wait any longer." Lu Ping was moved, but he asked, "Then how did you find me now?" Xie Tianyang glanced at Sang Yu and said, "It's not me who found you, it's him." Sang Yu smiled and said, "Brother Xie didn't know that you're an alchemy grandmaster, nor did he know that you know the long-lost spiritual water alchemy technique. I just came in today and originally went to the Purple Sun Tower to find Brother Xie, but I didn't expect to hear from him that the spiritual water meridian nourishing pill had appeared in the trade fair. Now, how could I not know that Brother Lu has come?" The friendship between the 3 of them was forged when they went through life and death together in the Western Wilderness. Strictly speaking, Lu Ping had saved their lives, and the 2 of them had tried their best to help Lu Ping. Therefore, Xie Tianyang did not hide the fact that Lu Ping had the purple crystal royal jelly from Sang Yu. He knew that people like him, Lu Ping, and Sang Yu would not owe someone a favor for nothing, even if they needed help. They would definitely make it up to them later. Lu Ping naturally understood this, so he did not say anything. Xie Tianyang asked, "Who was that person just now? He seems to be more familiar with you than we are." Lu Ping said, "We're brothers, of course we're more familiar with each other than you." Xie Tianyang smiled sheepishly and said, "So we're the outsiders." Island Master Huang Li, this name sounds so domineering. I heard that the islands in the outer seas are divided into giant, large, medium, small, and micro. What kind of island is this Huang Li island of yours? Before Lu Ping could answer, Xie Tianyang seemed to have thought of something and said, No, why does this Huang Li island sound so familiar? Lu Ping was stunned for a moment, then he saw Xie Tianyang suddenly say, I remember now, North Sea's Huang Li Island, a micro-island that Zhenling seized from Xianling sect. Later on, it was managed by Zhenling's third-generation disciples. After the North Sea demon tribe launched the beast tide to attack the North Sea's cultivation world, Huang Li Island has become the front line of the battle between humans and demons. The demon tribe has launched numerous attacks in an attempt to take back this island from Zhenling's hands, but to no avail. Now, the island is managed by Zhenling's array master, Hu Lili. Xie Tianyang recited this paragraph as if he was reciting a book, but he suddenly asked in confusion, That's not right. This Huang Li Island is clearly managed by your sect's array master. How did you become the island master? Could it be that you've taken over the island? Lu Ping was secretly shocked. This was clearly the information about the North Sea that Purple Sun Palace had obtained. Now, it was recited by Xie Tianyang. Since when did the North Sea, which was regarded as a barren and enclave in the cultivation world, become so valued by a sacred ground like Purple Sun Palace? Or rather, the North Sea's cultivation world had never escaped the attention of a major sacred ground like Purple Sun Palace. It was just that the North Sea's cultivation world had never known about it. In fact, Lu Ping had experienced something similar before. However, it did not raise Lu Ping's vigilance like now. Or perhaps Xie Tianyang was secretly reminding Lu Ping of something. Since Purple Sun Palace was acting this way, Lu Ping naturally believed that the other major sacred grounds and sects must be the same. Perhaps those major sects like Heavenly Shen sect had never relaxed their attention on the North Sea's cultivation world. Chapter 843. Lu Ping calmed himself down and said, What do you mean by a dove's nest occupied by a sparrow? Brother Xie, I didn't think that your sect would pay so much attention to a place as bitter as the North Sea. However, your sect's information is too inaccurate. You didn't even know that Hu Lili is my fiancé. Ah! Xie Tianyang exclaimed exaggeratedly and said, So it's sister-in-law. So that's how it is. Earlier, when your fellow disciple called you Island Lord Huang Li, I thought Brother Sang had found the wrong person. Lu Ping did not dwell on this matter. Instead, he asked in a serious tone, What business do the two of you have with me this time? Xie Tianyang pointed at Sang Yu and said, He was the one who wanted to find you. At most, I'm just here to remind you not to fall for the lightning punishment water. This matter has been hidden from the elders of the sect. If the elders of the sect find out about your identity, I'm afraid they will personally come looking for you. I won't be able to stop them. Lu Ping was a little confused and asked, It's because of the amethyst royal jelly? This is also something that I do not understand. Although this item is a rare treasure in the world, and it is necessary to increase the success rate of Dharma adepts, and many longevity adepts require this item to be refined. However, if this item could cause the Holy Lands to join forces and set up a trap, I don't think I have the face to do so. Xie Tianyang helplessly shrugged and said, You still don't know? Without waiting for Lu Ping to answer, Xie Tianyang only needed to see Lu Ping's stunned expression to know the answer. He continued, Although the amethyst royal jelly is precious, it is not enough to cause such a big reaction from the Holy Lands. However, if the queen bee that brewed the amethyst royal jelly has advanced to the core forging stage, then the royal jelly refined by it will be extraordinary. Lu Ping was shocked, but he still maintained a stunned expression and said, A core forging amethyst queen bee? What's the difference? Although Lu Ping had roughly guessed the cause of the problem, with his alchemy skills, he didn't need to waste royal jelly on the minor forging spirit pills and spirit water meridian cultivating pills. Plus, Lu Zilan had left some royal jelly for him before she advanced to the core forging stage. Therefore, Lu Ping didn't use the amethyst royal jelly that Lu Zilan made after she advanced to the core forging stage. To be able to cultivate amethyst royal jelly into a core forging stage monster beast, there are records dating back to 20,000 years ago. After 20,000 years, until thousands of years ago, the amethyst bees disappeared from the cultivation world. Since then, not a single force has been able to cultivate an amethyst queen bee to the core forging stage. On the other hand, the royal jelly brewed by the core forging amethyst queen bee is twice as effective as the royal jelly brewed by the blood condensation realm's royal jelly. In other words, the original 10% increase in success rate will be increased by at least 20%. Also, I heard that the core forging amethyst queen bee has many other uses, but I don't know about them. Xie Tianyang spoke with confidence and composure, but he didn't notice that Lu Ping's face had become increasingly gloomy. Sang Yu, who was watching from the side, hurriedly tugged at the corner of Xie Tianyang's clothes. Xie Tianyang stared blankly at Lu Ping. "Brother Xie," Lu Ping coldly said, "if I remember correctly, when I released the news about the amethyst royal jelly, I only gave the shopkeeper a little honey. The amethyst queen bee didn't need to personally make the amethyst queen bee. It's possible that the royal jelly was brewed by a core forging amethyst queen bee, but the honey shouldn't have been brewed by a core forging amethyst queen bee. If I'm not wrong, the royal jelly was only given to you. Why is it causing such a ruckus now?" Xie Tianyang was flabbergasted. Only now did he realize where the problem lay. His expression immediately became embarrassed. After a moment, he let out an embarrassed laugh and said, "This brother was negligent. After receiving the royal jelly from Brother Lu, this brother originally didn't know that it was actually brewed by a core forging amethyst queen bee. That day, I saw a treasure belonging to Wuxing School's Qin Wuliang and wanted to trade for it. Unexpectedly, Qin Wuliang was extremely unwilling, and in the end, I could only take out the royal jelly. Unexpectedly, the person who came with Qin Wuliang that day was an alchemist grandmaster from Wuxing School. This person is very experienced and knowledgeable. With just a glance, he determined that Brother Lu's royal jelly was brewed by a core forging amethyst queen bee. He immediately made the decision on behalf of Qin Wuliang to trade for the royal jelly. Xie Tianyang smiled bitterly and said, "This brother also realized that something was wrong. It's just that at that time, I had already agreed to the other party's request, so I couldn't go back on my word. Fortunately, that Qin Wuliang could be considered reasonable. After knowing that the royal jelly was brewed by a core forging amethyst queen bee, he lowered the price. Otherwise, even this brother would have suffered a great loss." Lu Ping wasn't worried about this. He opened his mouth and asked, "Did they not ask Brother Xie where you obtained the royal jelly?" Xie Tianyang smiled bitterly and said, "Naturally, I obtained it from the cultivator who caused an uproar in mysterious Sky Ancient City. For this, I even exchanged a portion of the lightning tribulation water that my sect brought with me, and even offended the mysterious Sky sect. However, that cultivator was really strange. After I made the trade with him, I didn't find out anything about him." Lu Ping nodded and relaxed. Xie Tianyang didn't divulge any information about himself because of the royal jelly. However, the news of Xie Tianyang obtaining the royal jelly brewed by a core forging amethyst queen bee couldn't be concealed. Sang Yu, who was at the side, suddenly interjected, "Actually, the big sects didn't only do this for the royal jelly." Xie Tianyang was stunned. He turned his head and asked, "Why? Did Brother Sang also hear about it?" The cultivators of the spirit-taming beast sect roamed the world, so they were very well informed about the news of the cultivation world. Sang Yu nodded and said, "Brother Lu spread the news that he obtained the royal jelly from a senior's cave abode. The royal jelly of the core forging amethyst queen bee only appeared about 20,000 years ago. In that case, the senior's cave abode that Brother Lu obtained was at least from a powerful cultivator from 20,000 years ago. I believe the two of you can imagine what a 20,000-year-old senior's cave abode means without me saying much." Xie Tianyang sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Brother Lu, I didn't expect this." Lu Ping was also dumbfounded, but he quickly calmed down and said, "That's nothing. The North Sea's 7-star grotto heaven opens once every 100 years. This is no secret in the North Sea's cultivation world. I obtained the royal jelly from there. However, if you want to enter the grotto heaven, You must suppress your cultivation to the blood condensation realm. Otherwise, you won't even be able to enter the 7-star Grotto Heaven's spatial passage. Sang Yu smiled and said, I didn't expect the North Sea to have such ancient ruins. Xie Tianyang didn't care and said, the 7-star Grotto Heaven is indeed the blessed land of the 7 famous Laozus. This isn't a Grotto Heaven, but a minor chiliocosm. However, that minor chiliocosm is already connected to this world. Back then, the 7 Laozus had the ability to transcend the heavens. Otherwise, why do you think no one has been able to obtain this spatial treasure despite the hundreds of cultivators who have reached the true spirit realm since ancient times? After transcending the lightning tribulation, a spatial treasure could form a minor chiliocosm. Its body was also called a spatial treasure. Lu Ping roughly understood the situation. In his heart, he was even more determined not to reveal the royal jelly at this trade fair no matter what. However, Lu Ping still made fun of Xie Tianyang and said, Brother Xie, you didn't lose out in exchanging for Qin Wuliang's treasure, but I lost out in exchanging for your tribulation lightning water. At that time, I didn't realize that there was another name for the core forging royal jelly. Xie Tianyang made a vigilant expression and said, Are you kidding me? We're done with the goods. Don't even think about the royal jelly. Lu Ping laughed and no longer paid attention to Xie Tianyang. Instead, he turned to Sang Yu and asked, Oh right, Brother Sang, why did you come looking for me this time? Sang Yu smiled embarrassedly and said, I didn't come to find Brother Lu, but after coming to this trade fair, I heard about the royal jelly from Brother Xie. That's why I thought about it. After hearing about the Meridian Nourishing Pill, I was sure that Brother Lu was here, so I came looking for you. It was also for the royal jelly. Lu Ping looked at the two of them speechlessly and said, Since Brother Sang has asked, I will definitely agree. However, I don't have much of this royal jelly. In order to get the tribulation lightning water, Brother Xie extorted 3 bottles from me. I'm really short on money now. Sang Yu withdrew a jade bottle from his pocket and said, Don't worry, I naturally won't let Brother Lu suffer a loss. This jade bottle contains 6 spirit link pills that I've accumulated over the years. I know that the pets under Brother Lu's command are rather extraordinary. Even though Brother Lu has already obtained a few from martial ancestral Uncle Wu, I presume Brother Lu won't complain about having too many. When Lu Ping heard that it was a spirit-clearing pill, his eyes immediately lit up. The spirit-clearing pill was similar to the spirit-forging pill. Each demonic cultivator could only take 3 at most. Currently, Lu Ping only allowed each of his spiritual pets to take 1 spirit-clearing pill. How many does Brother Sang want? Lu Ping looked at the jade bottle and asked. Xie Tianyang couldn't help but twitch his mouth. This guy had just said that he didn't have much royal jelly left, but when he saw the spirit-clearing pill, he asked how many do you want? It was as if Sang Yu could have as many as he wanted. Could it be that Xie Tianyang's tribulation lightning water was inferior to his spirit-clearing pill? Sang Yu scratched his head and took out a fist-sized piece of soil from his storage artifact. He said, 6 spirit-clearing pills and this piece of growing soil. I want to exchange them for 3 bottles of royal jelly from Brother Lu. Without waiting for Lu Ping to reply, Sang Yu continued, I also know that these things aren't enough to exchange for 3 bottles of royal jelly. Originally, I found a bloody skeleton flower in front of a small house today. I know that Brother Lu obtained the pill formula for the spiritual water meridian nourishing pill from Martial Grand Uncle Wu. This bloody skeleton flower is very suitable for Brother Lu, but I didn't expect that the small house would display it and want to exchange it for the Wonder Dew of 10,000. Thinking about how precious the Wonder Dew of 10,000 is, where would I find it? In the end, I could only watch as the treasure was exchanged for by an alchemy grandmaster. Sang Yu sighed as he spoke. Lu Ping didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this. The bloody skeleton flower had indeed been exchanged for by him. It was just that everyone had been wearing black cloaks at the time, so no one knew each other's identities. However, the fist-sized piece of growing soil was still considered a rare treasure. Although Lu Ping had obtained similar pieces of growing soil in the past, the one Sang Yu took out was undoubtedly of a higher quality. There were very few impurities in the solidified growing soil. Lu Ping's growing soil was a rare treasure. All right, I'll exchange it. Sang Yu was overjoyed. Chapter 844. After exchanging with Sang Yu, Lu Ping thought for a while and said to Xie Tianyang, Brother Xie, there's one more thing I need to trouble you with. If you can do it, I'll forget about the core forging stage royal jelly. What do you think? Although Xie Tianyang was reluctant to admit that he had taken advantage of Lu Ping, he just wanted to show Lu Ping his attitude. He could owe favors, but he wouldn't give up on the core forging stage royal jelly. Lu Ping's words jolted Xie Tianyang's spirit. Although they were still young, they still valued the favors they owed others and wouldn't easily let go of them. Lu Ping's words jolted Xie Tianyang's spirits. Xie Tianyang and Xie Tianyang were both arrogant figures. Lu Ping wanted to forget about the favor he owed Xie Tianyang just now, which was great in Xie Tianyang's eyes. However, when he saw the smile on Lu Ping's face, he couldn't help but feel nervous. Xie Tianyang asked cautiously, What's the matter? I'll tell you first, I won't do anything to die. Lu Ping ignored his words and said directly, I want the Tianxian sect's spirit vein essence milk, but I can't use the purple crystal royal jelly to exchange for it. Brother Xie, do you have a way to get it? Xie Tianyang shouted, Are you kidding me? The Tianxian sect clearly wants you to use the purple crystal royal jelly to exchange for it. How can I ask them for it? Do you want me to use my royal jelly to exchange for it? Xie Tianyang didn't know what kind of wicked idea he had thought of. He chuckled and said, Of course, if you come down and replenish the royal jelly, I don't mind making a trip for you. But in this way, won't I confirm our relationship? At that time, not to mention the pressure from the other sects, I won't even be able to withstand the pressure from my own sect's old ancestor. At that time, don't blame me for not being loyal to you, Brother Lu. Sang Yu looked at Xie Tianyang's complaints and couldn't help but burst into laughter. Xie Tianyang pointed at Sang Yu and said, Why don't you ask him to negotiate with the Tianxian sect? He is the spirit beast sect's world wayfarer. His status in the cultivation world is not lower than mine, and he has a strong background. He can handle this. Lu Ping also played a shameless trick this time and said, I'll leave this matter to you, Brother Xie. As for whether you go to Brother Sang or not, that has nothing to do with me. Xie Tianyang thought for a while and said, Don't even think about negotiating with the Tianxian sect directly. The relationship between the 5 Holy Lands and Tianxian sect is very delicate. That is why I wanted Brother Ping to help. Now, there is a chance. Lu Ping was delighted and said, What's wrong? Xie Tianyang said, It seems that Lu Ping is the only one who has the purple crystal royal jelly. As long as Brother Lu doesn't do anything, the Tianxian sect's spirit vein essence milk won't be exchanged. However, as the host this time, the Tianxian sect didn't manage to exchange the spirit vein essence milk and ended up in their own hands. This is extremely embarrassing for the Tianxian sect, but for most cultivators, the Tianxian sect made such a big fuss over some groundless rumors. They were actually fooled by a few words. The Tianxian sect can't afford to lose face no matter what. Sang Yu understood what Xie Tianyang meant and said, Brother Xie, are you saying that the Tianxian sect will change the way they trade in the end? Before Xie Tianyang nodded, Lu Ping said on the other side, Oh, the Tianxian sect can't afford to lose face. I think the other big sects are the same. Doesn't this mean that in the end, the Wuxing School and the Crystal Palace will also change the way they trade for the Thunder Tribulation liquid? Xie Tianyang made a sound and said, What's wrong, Brother Lu? Is one Thunder Tribulation liquid really not enough? A Heaven upper grade spirit liquid is enough for you to condense a level 9 gold core? Lu Ping didn't know how to explain. Sang Yu said, It's extremely difficult to smelt the Thunder Tribulation liquid. In case of failure, it's normal to have one Thunder Tribulation liquid as a backup. Otherwise, Lu Ping will have to wait for decades or even centuries for one Thunder Tribulation liquid. That's true. Xie Tianyang nodded, but there was some suspicion in his eyes. It seemed that he didn't completely believe that Lu Ping exchanged the other Thunder Tribulation liquid for backup. On the side, Lu Ping smiled and nodded, seeming to agree with Sang Yu's words. Xie Tianyang couldn't find a flaw in Lu Ping's words, so he said, If the Tianxian sect is really as we think, I will find a way to trade for this spirit vein essence milk. But Brother Lu, what will you use to trade for this spirit vein essence milk? Xie Tianyang stepped forward to trade for the spirit vein essence milk. This naturally prevented Lu Ping from exposing himself. No one would have any designs on the Purple Sun Palace's direct disciple. Lu Ping said, even if you want the purple crystal royal jelly, I won't give it to you. I gave you 3 bottles and Brother Sang 3 bottles. I still have some left to refine. Even if the real spirit Laozu comes, I won't have it. Xie Tianyang seemed to have expected Lu Ping to say this. He smiled and said, actually, Brother Lu doesn't need the purple crystal royal jelly to trade for it. Brother Lu doesn't even need to use any treasures. This time, it was Lu Ping's turn to be vigilant. He took 2 steps back and said, Brother Xie, are you joking with me? Xie Tianyang put away the smile on his face and said, to be honest, Brother Lu, everything I say is true. However, Xie Tianyang's solemn expression suddenly changed. He smiled sinisterly and said, but Brother Lu wants to give me a sword technique. Lu Ping was stunned. He instinctively asked, what sword technique? Lu Ping knew quite a few sword techniques. Aside from the dozens of powerful sword techniques that he commonly used, there were hundreds of other sword techniques. Lu Ping and Xie Tianyang had exchanged swordsmanship experiences before. They both admired each other's swordsmanship attainments and understood each other's sword techniques. Therefore, Xie Tianyang's question made Lu Ping a little confused as to which sword technique he wanted. If I can really trade for the spirit vein essence milk from the heavenly profound sect, I want to see the entire inheritance of the overwhelming sky sect's sky boiling boil sword technique. The entire inheritance of the sky overflowing boil sword art didn't just include the sky overflowing boil sword art divine ability. This divine ability itself had 4 sets of great divine abilities as the foundation. Only by mastering 2 of the 4 great divine abilities would one be able to perform the sky overflowing boil sword art. However, at this moment, the sky overflowing boil sword art could only display the power of the great divine ability sword art. Once one mastered any 3 of the 4 basic abilities, the power of the overflowing boil would be pushed to the level of a supreme ability. Only after mastering all 4 basic abilities, the overflowing boil would be able to unleash the power of the supreme ability to the maximum. Until now, Lu Ping had only managed to combine the 2 basic great techniques, water seep sword skill, and serial spin kill, to unleash the power of a top-notch great technique. However, the power of a supreme great technique was limited by one's cultivation base. Actually, Lu Ping's attainments in the other 2 great techniques of the seeping water sword technique and the flying spiral kill were already quite high. However, due to his own cultivation, he was unable to fuse them with the seeping water sword technique and the flying spiral kill. The entire inheritance of the sky boiling boil sword technique that Xie Tianyang spoke of was actually the entire inheritance of the 4 great techniques of the sky sect. Sang Yu asked curiously, even though this bubbling heavens sword art was known as the #1 sword art inheritance of the overwhelming heavens sect, it should be a water-type sword art. You have the extreme Yang Li fire, so how are you able to cultivate this sword art? Could it be that you are seeking this sword technique for Ziyang Palace? I don't think you are such a righteous person. Xie Tianyang was angered by Sang Yu's words. He pointed at Sang Yu but couldn't say anything. On the other hand, Lu Ping said, since Brother Sang doesn't know this, the sky boiling boil sword technique is actually an extremely special set of water and fire sword techniques. Only cultivators who truly cultivate both water and fire techniques can unleash the highest level of this sword technique. Seeing the surprised look on Sang Yu's face, Lu Ping explained, this set of techniques can be practiced by both water-based and fire-based practitioners. However, both types of practitioners are unable to maximize the power of this set of swordsmanship techniques. Even though there are practitioners who train in both water-based and fire-based techniques, very few of them are able to reach the core forging stage, and even fewer of them are able to achieve the Dharma stage. Even if there are 1 or 2 who are lucky enough to achieve the Dharma stage, their cultivation has already reached a critical stage, and it is difficult for them to even maintain their cultivation, let alone practice swordsmanship techniques. If they are not careful, their core space will self-destruct. Thus, even in the Ying Tian sect, No one was able to practice this set of swordsmanship techniques to its maximum power. Only practitioners who practice water-based or fire-based techniques can achieve 80 to 90% of its power. Xie Tianyang, who was at the side, also said, the so-called overflowing sky faction originally meant that there was a ruckus of voices. However, this overflowing sky faction took the literal meaning literally. If water is to boil, it must be boiled by fire. Even our sect's Laozu believes that this boiling sky sword technique is unique. If I can obtain the complete inheritance and verify it with the sword technique I cultivate, it will definitely be of great help to the improvement of my sword technique. Lu Ping did not hesitate this time and immediately nodded in agreement. Although the Purple Sun Palace was not a sword cultivation sect, its swordsmanship was known to be unparalleled in the world. Sword cultivation held an important position in the Purple Sun Palace. It was even sometimes referred to as the Purple Sun Sword Sect or number 1 sword sect in the world. Although this boiling sky sword technique was amazing, among the countless sword technique inheritances of the Purple Sun Palace, it was at most the icing on the cake. It would not increase one's strength by much. The Purple Sun Palace could not cultivate all of their own sword techniques. This inheritance was just as Xie Tianyang had said, it could only be used as a reference at most. Moreover, this sword technique had only been taken by Xie Tianyang to make a copy. It was just one more person who knew about it. Lu Ping still had the essence of this sword technique, but if the spirit vein essence were to be exchanged with someone else, it would really be gone. After sending Xie Tianyang and Sang Yu off, Lu Ping welcomed Shentian Zhenren in. Shentian Zhenren smiled and said, "Are they the cultivators you befriended in Middle-earth?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "One is Xie Tianyang, the lesser marsh sword of the Purple Sun Palace, and the other is Sang Yu, the Empyrean walker of the Spirit Beast Taming Sect. They are both good friends I made when I was traveling in Middle-earth. Xie Tianyang, the lesser marsh sword, and Sang Yu, the Empyrean walker of the Spirit Beast Taming Sect. These were the rising stars of the cultivation world in Middle-earth. They were both existences who could fight against Dharma adepts while they were still in the core forging stage." Shentian Zhenren's face carried a hint of surprise and envy as he said, "The rumors in the cultivation world say that Junior Brother and the two of them battled the fourth elder of the Tenma people, Ma Li Laozu, in the western wilderness. It looks like it's true. Junior Brother, I didn't expect that after traveling in Middle-earth for so many years, you've actually made such a big name for yourself. Even our sect's reputation in Middle-earth has increased a lot because of you." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Senior brother and senior sister are guarding Yingshan Immortal Academy and can't split themselves to travel the world of Middle-earth. This has given junior brother the opportunity to shine. If senior brother and the others have the opportunity in the future, our sect's reputation in Middle-earth will definitely be even greater." Shentian Zhenren shook his head and said, "Junior brother, you don't have to be like this. I know my own abilities very well. I can become an elite disciple in these famous sects, but if I want to be compared to the direct disciples of their respective sects like Xie Tianyang and Sang Yu, there's no doubt that I'm still a long way off. Among the third-generation disciples of our sect, the only one who can be compared to these people is junior brother Lu." Lu Ping didn't want to say too much about this, so he asked, "Why did senior brother come to find me this time?" When it came to proper business, Shentian Zhenren's face sank and he said, "Junior brother, why did you take out the minor forging spirit pills? You should know that these pills are extremely precious even in the Middle-earth. Even if they can't compare to the secret pills of the Holy Lands, they are definitely not weaker than the pills that large sects like the Profound Sky Sect and the others use to increase the spirituality of spiritual objects. This is the foundation of our sect's rise to become a large sect. If you leak this pill and other sects covet it, not only will you be in danger, others might even be able to trace it back to our sect and bring trouble to our sect." Lu Ping nodded seriously and said, "This is indeed junior brother's negligence. I didn't think they would find out about me, so I wanted to use the few minor forging spirit pills in my possession to exchange for some good spiritual objects that the sect urgently needs, so I took them out." In fact, the reason why Lu Ping took out the minor forging spirit pills was because Lu Ping had truly grasped the refining method of the spirit forging pill. In his eyes, the minor forging spirit pills were naturally useless. He took them out now to exchange for some treasures from others. However, in Zhenling, only Laozu and Lu Ping knew about the spirit forging pill. Although Shentian Daoist had a high status among the third-generation disciples and was a direct disciple in Zhenling, he didn't have the qualifications to know about the secret of the spirit forging pill. However, Shentian Daoist had good intentions, and what he said was indeed reasonable. Thinking about how Qing Li Laozu had rushed over the moment Lu Ping and the Dharma phase Laozu clashed over the skull flower, the formation that was originally used to conceal the cultivators' identities might be used by the profound sky sect to monitor them. Seeing Lu Ping like this, Shentian Daoist felt embarrassed to say more. After all, although Shentian Daoist had the title of senior brother, when it came to real status in Zhenling, Shentian Daoist couldn't compare to Lu Ping. Shentian Daoist thought for a moment and asked, "I didn't think that junior brother would enter the underground palace alone. What did junior brother gain in the past 2 days?" Previously, enlightened Master Shen Tian had seen Lu Ping's harvest for the day. Although he only saw a small part of it, the number of Earth-grade and Heaven-grade spirit items still shocked enlightened Master Shen Tian. This made enlightened Master Shen Tian even more curious about what Lu Ping had traded for the past 2 days. Although Shen Tian Daoist had made sufficient preparations, he was still stunned by the dozen or so Earth and Heaven spirit treasures Lu Ping had traded. After a long time, he guessed, "Junior brother is truly worthy of being our sect's treasure boy. You want to hand these things over to the sect?" Lu Ping spread his hands and said, "Why would I want to keep these things? Besides a few for other uses, the rest will be handed over to the sect. I think the sect is most lacking in Heaven and Earth spirit treasures right now, right?" Shentian Daoist nodded and said, "That's right. In the past few decades, our sect's 3rd and 4th generation disciples have made great progress in their cultivation. Many senior and junior brothers have already reached the required cultivation, but because of the lack of Heaven and Earth spirit treasures, they have been unable to break through their bottlenecks. Junior brothers' dozen or so Earth spirit treasures can be considered as delivering charcoal." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Senior brother is representing the Ying Shan Immortal Academy this time. I wonder what you exchanged for." Shentian Daoist smiled bitterly and said, "I originally had some gains. After all, this trade fair is a rare opportunity. Junior Sister Qi even specially returned to the sect with a batch of spirit treasures, elixirs, talismans, and the like. She wanted to exchange them for some spirit treasures at the trade fair to relieve the pressure of the sect's lack of spirit treasures. But seeing that junior brother has so many gains alone, junior sister Qi's and my gains seem a little lacking." Lu Ping knew that the sect had grown a lot in recent years, especially in the Ying Tian Dojo, where Lu Ping and Tianlin Laozu worked together to obtain benefits that far surpassed the other sects in the North Sea. It also allowed the Zhenling sect to rise rapidly. If it was said that the Zhenling sect lacked spirit treasures, Lu Ping would believe it. But if it was said that the Zhenling sect had other treasures, they should still have some. At the very least, they should be able to exchange them for quite a few spirit treasures at this trade fair. If it was really as Shentian Daoist said, that the Zhenling sect, which had come under the guise of the Ying Shan Immortal Academy, did not have many spirit treasures, it was either because Daoist Qi Xuanzai did not bring many spirit treasures from the Zhenling sect, and Qi Xuanzai's status in the Zhenling sect was lower than Shentian Daoist, so the Zhenling sect might not hand over some of the important spirit treasures to her. Or it could be that the poor Zhenling sect had set a high price for their spirit treasures, scaring off other cultivators who wanted to trade with them. Lu Ping asked curiously, "How many spirit treasures did you get?" Shentian Daoist said, "After all, we came to the trade fair under the guise of the Ying Shan Immortal Academy. Although we concealed our identities, we did not dare to be careless, so we did not bring too many important spirit treasures. We only exchanged for 2 heaven spirit treasures, 1 middle grade and 1 low grade. There were also only 7 or 8 earth spirit treasures, but there were 20 to 30 middle grade and high grade profound spirit treasures." Lu Ping was startled. This is still not enough. Chapter 845. Shentian Zhenren smiled bitterly. "Junior brother, you managed to exchange for so many spirit items on your own. I'm representing an entire sect, But my gains are slightly more than yours. How can I accept this? Xiantian Zhenren sighed. The curfew in the underground palace was about to end, so Xiantian Zhenren excused himself. Just as Lu Ping was about to send him off, Xiantian Zhenren suddenly turned around. This time, junior sister Qi returned to Tianling Mountain with a piece of news. Uncle Master Tianshu has come out of seclusion. Lu Ping paused. He couldn't remember when Tianshu Laozu had appeared in Zhenling. Then, his expression changed. Tianshu Laozu was Xiantian Zhenren before he reached Dharma manifestation. Lu Ping looked at Xiantian Zhenren, who nodded. Uncle Master Tianshu reached Dharma manifestation 3 years ago. After that, he went into seclusion for more than a year to consolidate his cultivation. After that, he took over Uncle Master Tianqin's position on Huangli Island and intimidated the North Sea monsters. Lu Ping nodded solemnly. I'll get back as soon as possible. After sending Xiantian Zhenren off, Lu Ping sat quietly in the small room. He didn't refine his inner yuan, but no one knew what he was thinking. After a while, he started preparing for the 3rd day, which was also the last day of the Underground Palace's Spirit Item Trade Fair, to exchange for the Spirit Items. 1 low Earth class and 2 low Mystic class Spirit Items. This time, Lu Ping decided to switch to the most frugal mode. Especially after hearing that Xiantian Zhenren had already exchanged for 20 to 30 Mystic class Spirit Items, he realized that for ordinary cultivators in Zhenling, advancing to core forging was already an extremely difficult thing. For most cultivators, including the Heavenly Mystic Sect, the 5 Holy Lands, and the Crystal Palace, reaching the Blood Condensation Realm was already an impressive achievement. Advancing to the core forging realm meant that most cultivators had exhausted their potential and had no more room for improvement. Among the disciples who were able to advance to the core forging stage, those who were able to advance to the 3rd layer of the core forging stage and touch the barrier of the mid-core forging stage were considered to be extremely lucky. If these people wanted to advance to the middle stage of the core forging realm, then an Earth-tier spirit treasure was as difficult to touch as a star in the sky, and a mystic spirit treasure was something that could only be discovered by luck. In their eyes, being able to advance to the middle stage of the core forging stage and become the backbone of the sect was already a blessing from the heavens. As for whether it was a low-grade or mid-grade mystic spirit treasure, it didn't matter much to them. The Earth-tier spirit items that Lu Ping had previously focused on were, in fact, only those who could at least become Zhenling's direct disciple, or even a direct disciple. Only these people could aim for a high-grade mystic spirit treasure on their first attempt, and at least a mid-grade Earth-tier spirit treasure on their second attempt. In this way, during the 3rd smelting of heaven and earth spirit objects, there would be a slight chance of smelting a heaven-level spirit object and achieving a 7th-grade golden core. At this time, cultivators would have a little hope of reaching the Dharma realm. Apart from that, for most core forging cultivators, the spirit items that were suitable for them were not Earth-tier spirit items, but mystic spirit items. When it came to arranging the treasures that could be used to exchange for spirit items, Lu Ping was in a bit of a dilemma. Without the restriction-breaking talismans and the minor forging spirit pills, it would be difficult to exchange other things for spirit items. The spirit water cultivating pills that had not been exchanged yesterday were exchanged by Lu Ping for 12 high-grade mystic spirit items instead of 1 high-grade earth-tier spirit item. Although 12 high-grade mystic spirit items were technically the same as 1 high-grade earth-tier spirit item, no cultivator would be stupid enough to exchange 1 high-grade spirit stone for 100 high-grade spirit stones. The difficulty of finding 12 high-grade mystic spirit items was definitely much harder than finding 1 high-grade earth-tier spirit item. This was also because the 5 spirit water cultivating pills had not been exchanged yesterday. Otherwise, why would Lu Ping have exchanged the earth-tier spirit items for 12 high-grade mystic spirit items? Lu Ping thought for a moment, and then took out a jade box from his storage ring. He opened the jade box, and a round, purple gold pill appeared in the middle of the jade box. Lu Ping placed the jade box in the middle of the stone table. This was a 10-year longevity pill that he had refined himself. It was enough to exchange for a spirit item. This 10-year longevity pill was marked by Lu Ping as a low-grade heaven-tier spirit item. Something like a longevity pill was a priceless treasure for a cultivator who had reached the end of his or her lifespan. To a Dharma adept, 10 years was enough for them to do many things. In fact, in the cultivation world, there were 15 and 20-year longevity pill recipes. It was just that these high-grade longevity pill recipes all required a main ingredient, which was the mid-grade heaven-tier spirit item, the Thousand Wonder Dew. This was also why the mid-grade heaven-tier Thousand Wonder Dew was sometimes worth as much as a high-grade heaven-tier spirit item. In fact, in the cultivation world, there was also a high-grade longevity pill recipe, which was the 30-year longevity pill recipe. Legend had it that this recipe was passed down by Taoist Gui, one of the seventh patriarch of the heavens. This recipe had not appeared in the cultivation world for many years. Although there were rumors that this recipe was actually kept by some holy land, many people believed that this recipe had long been lost in the cultivation world. Lu Ping himself had used 2 drops of the Thousand Wonder Dew in an attempt to refine a higher-grade longevity pill. However, he had only managed to refine 2 15-year longevity pills. This caused Lu Ping to be very disheartened, and he had not used the Thousand Wonder Dew to refine pills ever since. Lu Ping searched around in the golden house for a while. When he pulled his hand back, there was a large, juicy, red-skinned peach in his palm. Lu Ping weighed the big peach in his hand. In the end, he put it back and took out 2 walnut-sized golden fruits. All these years, Lu Ping had not used the azure wood pure jade fruit, the white jade lotus seed, the white jade lotus root, or the other spiritual treasures to refine pills to strengthen the physical body. The main reason was that Lu Ping had always had enough golden nuts to concoct the golden firmament pills. The golden nuts that Lu Ping obtained from the 7-star grotto heaven and the golden nuts from the tree had been used up long ago. However, for the past 100 years, Lu Ping had been meticulously managing the space in the golden house. He had moved the spirit vein, spread the living soil, buried the living soil, and so on, which greatly shortened the time needed for the golden nuts to ripen. The 2 golden nuts that Lu Ping was holding in his hand were the golden nuts that had matured again. The effect of the golden nuts on the physical body was naturally not as good as the azure wood pure jade fruit, let alone the white jade lotus seed, the bloody skeleton flower, and other spiritual treasures. However, the golden nuts that could strengthen the physical body of a cultivator were still a rare treasure to the Dharma adepts. Lu Ping immediately indicated that the 2 golden nuts could be exchanged for 2 mid-grade earth-level spiritual items. Actually, at this point, Lu Ping had already understood that in order to truly exchange for spiritual items at this trade fair, the best way was to target the Dharma adepts' needs. The other core forging adepts might not even have solved the problem of refining their own spiritual items, so how could they easily exchange the few spiritual items they had on hand? However, it was different for the Dharma adepts. Most of the spiritual items no longer had any direct impact on the Dharma adepts' level of practice, and it just so happened that most of the spiritual items in the world of practice were in the hands of the Dharma adepts. Hence, in order to truly exchange for a spiritual item, one had to target the Dharma adepts who had come to participate in the trade fair. Just looking at the spirit-calming incense that Lu Ping had placed on the stone table yesterday was enough to illustrate the problem. 12 incense sticks had been exchanged for a low-grade heaven-level spiritual item. Lu Ping dared to bet his own level of practice that no core forging adept would exchange a heaven-level spiritual item for a few incense sticks. Even though these incense sticks were also rare treasures in the world of practice, only Dharma adepts would use heaven-level spiritual items to exchange for these luxurious items. Lu Ping then took out 3 pieces of spirit-calming incense from the incense burner and marked them with the same price of a low-grade heaven-level spiritual item. However, when he thought about it, he felt that it was too high. Although the spirit-calming incense was more valuable than the spirit-calming incense, in actual terms, 1 spirit-calming incense could only be exchanged for 2 or 3 pieces of spirit-calming incense. Hence, Lu Ping erased the previous markings and marked them with the words exchange for 1 high-grade earth-level and mid-grade earth-level spiritual item each. Because Lu Ping had changed his mind this time, he wanted to change his main spiritual items from earth-level to a large number of black-level spiritual items. Hence, the prices of the items that Lu Ping had obtained from the other adepts were lower this time, and they were all targeted at low-grade black-level spiritual items. This made Lu Ping feel as if he was dumping his goods at a low price on the last day of the trade fair. After decorating his own exhibition room, Lu Ping circulated his inner yuan in his blood for a full cycle. On the last day of the underground trade fair, the Tianxian sect's morning bell rang. Lu Ping left his own room and walked towards the other exhibition rooms. Although Lu Ping had seen many of the items on display in the other rooms over the past 2 days, he had seen many new things. However, there were hundreds of exhibition rooms in the underground palace, and the items on display were constantly changing every day. In fact, Lu Ping could not even see 30 to 40% of the items on display. It was just that Lu Ping had already used up most of his bargaining chips, and he could only look at the items that he wanted to see. If he wanted to exchange for them, he would not have the strength to do so. Lu Ping saw with his own eyes that there was a high-grade alchemy furnace that was of decent quality in a small room. He was surprised that such an item was being sold. However, before he could go forward and ask about it, a cultivator had hurriedly exchanged it with him. Not only that, but yesterday, Lu Ping had heard that not only alchemy furnaces, but also alchemy furnace restrictions had also appeared at the trade fair. As for other things such as spirit-nurturing treasures, dharma pills, secret refining techniques, inheritance techniques, and so on, there were countless of them. Lu Ping shook his head and was about to walk in another direction when he vaguely heard a few words of conversation between 2 cultivators who were hurriedly walking past him. There were words like heaven and earth spirit fire, heavenly abode restriction, and so on. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat when he heard this, and he followed behind the 2 cultivators and walked in another direction. Chapter 846. If one were to ask which type of heaven and earth spirit was the most valuable in the world of cultivation, the answer would vary. However, if one were to ask which type of heaven and earth spirit was more valuable than the others, it would undoubtedly be the fire-type heaven and earth spirit. Whether it was alchemy or crafting weapons, they all required fire-type heaven and earth spirit. This wasn't to say that fire attribute spirit items were inherently more valuable than the other 6 attributes, nor was it to say that the other spirit items had no use other than helping cultivators increase their cultivation. Instead, regardless of whether it was spirit pills, magic treasures, or magic treasures, they were all indispensable items for cultivators to use in their daily cultivation. Because of this, spirit items were often more valuable than spirit items of the other attributes. Of course, this was not absolute, especially when it came to a specific type of heaven and earth spirit. For example, the Wonder Dew and the Golden Phosphorus Ghostfire were both mid-grade heaven and earth spirit, and the Golden Phosphorus Ghostfire was also a famous alchemy flame, but in terms of value, it might not be more valuable than the Wonder Dew. Another example was the Psychic Wood. Although the quality of this heaven and earth spirit was not high, it could awaken the spirit and increase intelligence. It was a treasure that many yarrow and spirit cultivators dreamed of. Among the heaven and earth spirit of the same level, even if it was not the best, it was still one of the most valuable heaven and earth spirit. Even so, fire-type heaven and earth spirit still had an illustrious position in the world of cultivation. For alchemists and craftsmen, any heaven and earth spirit of the same level had to be fought over. The heaven and earth spirit that Lu Ping was currently using for alchemy was the Fire Phoenix clan's alchemy master, Yang Wuzhou Laozu, the Crimson Spirit Flame. It was a high-grade earth and was one of the best spirit fires of the same level. It was also the spirit flame that Lu Ping had been using for alchemy for many years. Although the high-grade earth spirit flame was enough for Lu Ping to use to refine Dharma stage pills, as Lu Ping's cultivation and alchemy skills increased, the Crimson Spirit Flame was gradually unable to meet Lu Ping's needs for alchemy. Getting a higher-grade heaven and earth spirit flame was also gradually becoming part of Lu Ping's considerations. One of the most important objectives of Lu Ping's participation in the trade fair this time around was to obtain a type of heaven-tier spiritual fire that was suitable for alchemy. Unfortunately, in the past 2 days, Lu Ping did not obtain any kind of spiritual fire. Although Lu Ping had seen a few spiritual fires in other exhibition rooms, it was a pity that they were not suitable for alchemy or the quality of the spiritual fire was not high enough. Therefore, when Lu Ping unintentionally heard that a heaven and earth spirit object had appeared, and that it had caused 2 Dharma adepts to rush over, it meant that this flame was at least of the heaven grade. As a result, Lu Ping had to go take a look no matter what. As for the heavenly passage treasure restriction that the cultivator mentioned, although it was comparable to the pill furnace treasure restriction, it wasn't something that Lu Ping could get his hands on. Not to mention, he didn't have many bargaining chips to covet the heavenly passage treasure restriction. From afar, he could see that there were already more than 10 cultivators standing in front of a small house. Moreover, because these 10 cultivators had attracted the attention of more and more people, more cultivators were slowly making their way over. At this time, Lu Ping was no longer anxious. If there really was a heaven-level spiritual fire in the small house, with more than 10 cultivators gathered together, and most of them were Dharma adepts, but they could only watch from the side, then the price of this heaven-level spiritual fire was either extremely high, so high that even Lao Tzu would not be able to afford it, or the item that they wanted to exchange for was extremely rare in the world of practice. If there were people who could fight for it, they would have already snatched it, and it wouldn't have attracted so many people to watch. Lu Ping was confident that his own wealth was not weak, but he did not think that his wealth was comparable to that of the Dharma adepts here, Lao Tzu. Lu Ping turned around and walked to the front of the small house from another direction. His divine will quickly rushed towards the heaven and earth spirit object in the middle of the small house. The silvery white flame was like a blooming lotus that was dancing. As it danced, a halo of light circled around the flame. Ah, it's actually the silver spirit flame. Lu Ping looked at this beautiful flame and muttered to himself. The silver spirit flame was a mid-grade heaven-level flame, and it was suitable for refining elixirs. The silver spirit flame had a very special name among the many heaven and earth spirit flames. It was called the gentle flame. Most flames were violent. Even the spirit flames used for refining elixirs were not as violent as the flames used for crafting weapons, but that was only relative. However, the silver spirit flame was an anomaly among these heaven and earth spirit flames. For some reason, when this spirit flame was used for refining elixirs, it consumed more qi than other spirit flames by half. Moreover, the time needed to form the elixirs was often longer than usual. Therefore, when a cultivator used the silver spirit flame to refine elixirs, the consumption of their divine will was often half as much as usual. The increased consumption of qi was not an easy problem for a spirit cultivator who had a weak accumulation of qi. The longer the time needed to refine elixirs was also a kind of mental and divine will torture for a spirit cultivator. However, although the silver spirit flame had many shortcomings, it was still favored by most spirit cultivators in the cultivation world. The main reason was that the silver spirit flame could increase the success rate of refining elixirs as much as a high-grade heaven-level spirit flame. Moreover, the elixirs refined with the silver spirit flame were usually very pure. When a cultivator consumed the elixirs, the effects of the elixirs would be very gentle and there would be very little waste. In other words, the elixirs refined with the silver spirit flame would be more effective than the elixirs refined with other spirit flames. Naturally, it would increase the cultivation of a cultivator by a lot. In particular, the healing elixirs refined with the silver spirit flame could greatly reduce the impact of the elixirs on the body and meridians of cultivators who were seriously injured and could not withstand the fierce medicinal effects of ordinary healing elixirs. It could be said that the elixirs refined with the silver spirit flame were a kind of elixir that was between ordinary elixirs and the spirit water pill incubation technique. It could also be said that it was a kind of elixir that combined the advantages of the two kinds of elixir refining techniques. Although using it to concoct pills consumed a lot of energy, the efficacy of the spirit pills was higher than that of ordinary pills. Although it was still not as mild as the medicinal properties of the spirit water pill brewing technique and some other special effects, its success rate was much higher than that of the spirit water pill brewing technique, which could only refine one spirit pill at a time. The consumption of qi was not a problem for Lu Ping, and the consumption of divine will was not a problem for Lu Ping. It was as if the silver spirit flame was born for Lu Ping. He had to get it. A thought flashed in Lu Ping's mind, and he could not stop thinking about it anymore. It kept surging in Lu Ping's mind. Lu Ping forcibly held back his excitement and pretended to be curious as he went forward to look at the exchange sign posted by the owner of the hut. Top-grade elixir furnace. Lu Ping gasped in shock. The first cauldron on the list was a top-grade cauldron. Although the silver spirit flame was very attractive to every alchemist, it was not just a little high to exchange for it with a top-grade elixir furnace, but it was ridiculously high. A top-grade elixir furnace was a treasure used by a sect to stabilize its luck. Even famous sects like the Tianxian sect, the Spirit Beast sect, the Five Holy Lands, and the Crystal Palace had more than one magic treasure elixir furnace, but top-grade elixir furnaces still played an important role in the sect. A top-grade elixir furnace could not be exchanged for a top-grade heaven step spiritual item. No sect would give up its luck for a heaven and earth spirit flame. It should be known that although the silver spirit flame was hard to find, a top-grade elixir furnace was not something that could be obtained overnight. It often required a sect to continuously improve for thousands of years, and it often condensed the blood, sweat, and tears of several generations of the sect. No one would give up the efforts of several generations for a heaven and earth spirit flame and become a generation that forgot their ancestors. Lu Ping then looked at the second option under the sign. It was a top-grade spiritual material that was equivalent to more than 5,000 years old. If the price of the first option was too high, forcing many cultivators to be unable to exchange for it, then the second option was downright crafty. How many top-grade spiritual materials that were more than 5,000 years old could be found in the cultivation world? When Sage Tianfeng was condensing his golden elixir, he had smelted a leaf of the wind that was 5,000 years old. This was enough, but the leaf of the wind was only a low-grade heaven step spiritual item, so it was not worth it. Furthermore, in the cultivation world, spiritual herbs that could reach 3,000 years old were very rare. Even a cultivator like Lu Ping had to prepare for a rainy day and start stocking up on spiritual herbs that were 3,000 years old before he entered the Dharma stage. Under such circumstances, spiritual materials that could reach 5,000 years old were even rarer. Furthermore, spiritual materials that had grown for more than 5,000 years, no matter how low the original quality was, would rise to become a third-grade spiritual material among the top-grade spiritual materials. It would often have many miraculous effects, and its value would not necessarily be low. The items that could be exchanged were expensive and tricky. It was no wonder that so many Dharma adepts stopped at the sight of it. As for the third option, Lu Ping did not know whether to laugh or cry. It was actually the purple crystal royal jelly. Lu Ping sighed in his heart. He originally had a treasure that fulfilled the requirements of the second option, which was the dead 8,000-year-old willow tree that the Longhuai ancestor had given to him in the secret grounds of the fallen meteorite. It was a pity that he did not have it with him now. Back then, Ji Xianxian had been studying the art of puppetry and had delayed his training. He had been disheartened, and Lu Ping had given him the art of puppetry that he had inherited from the Longhuai ancestor. After that, in order to encourage him to recover, Lu Ping had even given him the willow tree for safekeeping. He had also promised that after Lu Ping had advanced to the Dharma stage, he would personally create an avatar for Lu Ping. If the willow tree was here, Lu Ping would only need to chop off 3 main branches of the willow tree, and he would probably be able to exchange them for the silver spirit flame. It was just that he did not know if that would affect the creation of the avatar. At this moment, a person suddenly walked out from the crowd and headed towards the small house. Lu Ping's heart jumped, thinking that this person wanted to exchange for the silver spirit flame. Anxious, he could not help but take a step forward, but he immediately stopped in his tracks. In order to prevent any misunderstandings, Lu Ping looked around him and realized that it was not only him, but several other adepts had also involuntarily taken a step or two forward. This gave the adept who had just walked to the stone platform a fright, and he hurriedly turned around to look at the adept behind him, who was glaring at him. At this moment, Lu Ping saw that the adept was walking towards the stone platform beside the silver spirit flame, and on that stone platform was the jade scroll that Lu Ping had previously heard of that recorded the Forbidden Cave treasure. Chapter 847. Strictly speaking, a heavenly abode treasure restriction was superior to a precious cauldron of the same level in terms of its content and the profoundness of its composition. However, in fact, in the cultivation world, the value of a precious cauldron treasure restriction was slightly higher than that of a precious cauldron treasure restriction. The fundamental reason was the scarcity of a precious cauldron treasure restriction and the incomplete inheritance, while the inheritance of a heavenly abode treasure restriction was much more complete. Speaking of the inheritance of a precious cauldron treasure restriction, one had to mention Daoist Gui of the seventh patriarch of creation. There had always been a saying in the cultivation world, which was acknowledged by many alchemists, that it was precisely because of this Daoist Gui's laziness that the inheritance of a precious cauldron treasure restriction was incomplete. Back then, Jiao Daoren and Daoist Gui made an agreement to establish an overseas cultivation world. Jiao Daoren established the East Sea cultivation world, which was as rich as the Central Earth cultivation world, and then the North Sea cultivation world, while Daoist Gui slept in the South Sea for over 1,000 years. In the end, he barely managed to establish the South Sea cultivation world. After the seventh patriarch established the cultivation world, the seven Laozu made an agreement to pass on their Dao. Among the seven Laozu, Daoist Gui's alchemy skills were undoubtedly the best. The other Laozu had systematically and meticulously passed on their respective knowledge, and in the following tens of thousands of years, the cultivation world had developed various new inheritances. Daoist Gui was the only one who was exceptionally lazy. Unlike the other Laozu, who would give lectures every 3 to 5 years, Daoist Gui would usually give lectures every 7 to 8 years, and he would often miss, change, or even cancel his lectures because he was asleep. Daoist Gui's laziness made countless cultivators who came to listen to his lectures very dissatisfied, but they could do nothing about it. Many cultivators had tried to persuade Daoist Gui through the other 6 Laozu to maintain a regular pattern in his lectures, but Daoist Gui still did as he pleased. Until the era of the seventh patriarch of the Sky Splitter, Taoist Gui had only passed on the various cultivation methods of the turtle bloodline, but he had only taught 3 of the alchemy cauldrons he had left behind. In the end, he did not have time to explain the rest. Based on these 3 ordinary alchemy cauldrons, no matter how many alchemy cauldrons were developed in the cultivation world in the future, they could never break through the barrier of ordinary alchemy cauldrons. It was said in the cultivation world that Taoist Gui had only passed down the 3 restrictions of the common magic cauldrons, but not the psychic magic treasures of the cauldrons. However, there was another rumor that Taoist Gui had actually left behind some psychic magic treasures of the cauldrons. It was just that the 5 Holy Lands and the Crystal Palace had kept these treasures as their own treasures, and other sects and cultivators had no way of knowing about them. At present, among the cultivators present, there were quite a few people who had come for the heavenly abode. However, although exchanging for the mark of the heavenly abode was not as outrageous as exchanging for the silver spirit flame and a top-grade alchemy cauldron, it was not so easy to exchange for something. The cultivator hurriedly put away the treasure and then left the hut as if he was fleeing. Although many cultivators like Lu Ping had misunderstood this cultivator just now, it still brought him a lot of pressure. However, the heavenly abode was also a rare treasure. Many cultivators present had come for the heavenly abode, but after seeing that the treasure had been exchanged, they could only shake their heads regretfully and leave. There were also a few who simply chased after the cultivator who had just left. At this time, Lu Ping did not dare to hesitate, fearing that there would be another change, so he hurriedly walked forward and took out a brocade box covered with spirit sealing talismans from his storage magic tool. After opening the brocade box in front of him, the shield in front of the stone platform was immediately opened and the brocade box in his hand disappeared. Lu Ping grabbed the silver spirit flame in his hand, and then the flame disappeared from Lu Ping's hand. Then, like the cultivator just now, Lu Ping hurriedly walked outside. He exchanged for it. He exchanged for it. What? He exchanged for it. How is that possible? What did he use to exchange for it? A top-grade alchemy cauldron? Could it be the amethyst royal jelly? It looks like he is just a minor repairs cultivator at the core forging stage. Follow him. Suddenly, 7 or 8 people followed behind Lu Ping, and from their figures and auras, they seemed to be at the Dharma stage. Lu Ping secretly complained in his heart. The cultivators behind him did not stop him, but just followed closely behind him, which made Lu Ping feel somewhat helpless. At this time, two strong divine senses suddenly attacked from behind. When they approached behind Lu Ping, the two divine senses simultaneously imprinted two divine senses on Lu Ping's body. As long as Lu Ping left the underground palace, the owner of the two divine senses would be able to find Lu Ping through the imprints. At that time, with the cultivation of the two divine senses masters at the Dharma stage, could the person in front of them still escape? The two secretly imprinted the imprints on Lu Ping. Just as they were secretly happy, they suddenly felt the connection between the divine senses and the two imprints suddenly disappear. Pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, the two cultivators immediately stopped in their tracks. This person was definitely not a core forging stage cultivator. Then, the two of them separated themselves from the group of cultivators who were chasing Lu Ping. Another two divine senses were sent out, this time more directly. The two divine senses joined forces and rushed towards Lu Ping's mind. They wanted to destroy Lu Ping's divine senses in one fell swoop. Then, Lu Ping would definitely faint because of the collapse of his divine senses. At that time, the two cultivators behind him would be able to openly divide the treasures on Lu Ping's body. However, what the two did not see was that at this time, Lu Ping seemed to be playing with an ancient magic treasure that looked like a small flag as he walked. They saw Lu Ping holding the small flag and gently shaking it. It seemed that he was checking whether the small flag could still be used. At that moment, among the 5 cultivators who were still following Lu Ping, 2 of them suddenly shouted. Their hands covered their heads. One of them took 2 steps back while the other one squatted down. Lu Ping's footsteps did not stop. The remaining 3 cultivators looked at the 2 cultivators who suddenly shouted and hesitated for a moment. One of them only paused for a moment before turning around and leaving. Lu Ping and the 7 cultivators who were following him exchanged blows. Although they were all secretly using their divine senses, 4 of them were defeated one after another. This was not something that a core forging stage minor repairs could do. The person in front of them must be a core forging stage cultivator who used a secret technique to hide his cultivation. The remaining 2 seemed to be unwilling to give up and continued to chase after Lu Ping. However, they didn't take any drastic measures and only followed closely behind Lu Ping so that he wouldn't be shaken off. When they reached a place where there were few people, Lu Ping suddenly stopped and turned to look at the 2 cultivators behind him. He said, "Why are you 2 following me like this?" One of them beat him to it and said, "Fellow Daoist, please excuse me. I don't have any ill intentions following you. I just want to ask if the silver spirit flame is something that you need. If you don't need it to refine your jindan, I want to ask if you are willing to part with the silver spirit flame. I'm willing to exchange for it with enough treasures." Lu Ping asked with a smile that was not a smile. "Enough? Then why didn't you exchange for the silver spirit flame just now?" The man smiled bitterly and said, "The exchange method listed by the owner of that hut just now was really unbearable. Although I'm confident that I'm not weak, forget about the pill furnace, I really don't have any top-grade spirit materials over 5,000 years old and the purple crystal royal jelly. However, I do have other treasures on me, so it's not like I don't have anything that fellow Daoist needs. As long as fellow Daoist takes a liking to it, I won't say anything." Seeing that Lu Ping still did not move, the man could not help but increase the bargaining chip and said, "And although I can't give you something like a top-grade pill furnace, the value of the other things added up is definitely not lower than a top-grade pill furnace. What do you think?" Seeing Lu Ping's silence, the cultivator thought Lu Ping was already tempted. Hence, he decided to take advantage of the situation and continue his attack. His aura surged and a rich medicinal aroma permeated the surroundings. "Fellow Daoist, I'll be honest with you. I'm an alchemist and this silver spirit fire is exactly what I've been yearning for. If you're willing to exchange the spirit fire with me, you can come to me in the future if you have any alchemy needs. Even if you enter the avatar realm in the future, I'll still be able to help you." Although this man did not mention an alchemy grandmaster, his words revealed his identity as an alchemy grandmaster and he seemed to be very confident. If it was any other cultivator, being able to get the recognition of an alchemy grandmaster on the basis of equivalent exchange would be a profitable deal no matter what. However, He did not know that the cultivator standing in front of him was also an alchemy grandmaster, and his alchemy skills might not be lower than his. Lu Ping was too lazy to say more. The aura around him fluctuated, and a rich pill fragrance that was not weaker than his spread around his body. Although the friar's face was covered by a black cloak, Lu Ping could guess the interesting expression on his face at this time. Sure enough, the friar smiled bitterly and said, "I am showing off my slight skill in front of an expert. I am ashamed. Goodbye." The alchemy grandmaster left in a hurry. Lu Ping looked at the only cultivator who still did not leave. The man seemed to sense something and took a step forward, saying, "I did not expect your excellency to be an alchemy grandmaster. I have been disrespectful." Lu Ping nodded slightly and asked, "What is your excellency's plan?" The man pondered for a moment and said, "Was the treasure that your excellency used to exchange for the amethyst royal jelly?" Lu Ping was startled for a moment and said, "No." The man replied with an "Oh," and his interest seemed to grow even greater as he said, "So your excellency used the second method to exchange for the silver capital spirit flame? This is a little surprising. I wonder if your excellency can tell me what you used to exchange for the silver capital spirit flame? If your excellency still has such a spiritual item, I wonder if you can use it to exchange. I am willing to use other treasures to exchange for it." Lu Ping shook his head and said, "It is already very rare for me to have such a treasure. How could I have a second one to exchange for? I am sorry to disappoint your excellency." The man nodded and said, "That is true. In that case, there is no need to trouble your excellency. If your excellency has any needs in the future, you can come to Mysterious Sky Ancient City's Treasure Pavilion. My Treasure Pavilion has always bought and sold all kinds of rare treasures. As the Treasure Pavilion's shopkeeper, I will do my best to satisfy your excellency's need." Having said that, the man cupped his fists towards Lu Ping and turned to leave. This caused Lu Ping to be confused for a moment. It took him a long time to realize that the other party was trying to befriend him after seeing that there was no hope of obtaining the silver capital spirit flame and exchanging it for the silver capital spirit flame. After all, an alchemy grandmaster was worth anyone's effort to win over. Chapter 848. After a whole day, Lu Ping did not gain anything else. However, Lu Ping did not care. Just one silver spirit flame was enough to make Lu Ping satisfied. In the evening, Lu Ping returned to his exhibition room. Because the profound sky sect would open the entire underground palace after the evening bell rang, all the cultivators would be teleported out of the underground palace. So, at this time, most of the cultivators in the underground palace had returned to their exhibition rooms and put away all the treasures on display, regardless of whether they had been successfully exchanged or not. In the end, Lu Ping did not go to the pavilions where the 5 sacred lands, the profound sky sect, and the crystal palace were located to see if the spiritual vein essence and lightning tribulation water had changed the method of exchange. He also did not know if Xie Tianyang had already exchanged the spiritual vein essence with the profound sky sect. It was not that he did not want to go, but he really did not have any bargaining chips. In order to be able to exchange for the heaven middle grade silver spirit flame, Lu Ping did not even hesitate to take out a 9th grade white jade lotus seed and 2 spiritual monster peaches. Only then did he finally exchange for the silver spirit flame. Originally, Lu Ping wanted to use the spiritual monster peach to exchange for the silver spirit flame. Although the spiritual monster peach had ripened for at most a few hundred years, it was a fruit of the spiritual monster peach tree after all. Its effect was completely comparable to a top-grade spiritual treasure that was thousands of years old. However, using this method, Lu Ping would need at least 5 or 6 spiritual monster peaches. Moreover, Lu Ping had refined medicinal pills for several years, and now there were only a few spiritual monster peaches left. If he gave away the last few, Lu Ping was afraid that he would have to wait for more than 100 years for the next fruit of the spiritual monster peach tree to ripen. In desperation, Lu Ping could only reluctantly take out a precious lotus seed to exchange for the heaven middle grade spirit flame. After returning to the hut, Lu Ping was a little surprised to see that the stone platform was mostly empty. The meridian nourishing pellet was traded for more than a dozen mystic grade high grade spirit items, The 10 years longevity pellet was also traded for a heaven-grade low-grade spirit item, and the gold nut was even more valuable. Lu Ping wondered if he had set the price a little too low. The 3 soul-calming incense sticks were also traded away. Additionally, the one who traded them away had deliberately left a jade slip on the stone platform. Lu Ping checked the contents of the jade slip and found that the one who traded away the soul-calming incense was the same cultivator who traded away the soul-calming incense yesterday. In the message left on the jade slip, this cultivator went straight to the point and hoped that if Lu Ping had any extra soul incense to sell, he could come to the treasure pavilion in the mysterious Sky Ancient City for a face-to-face discussion after the end of the underground trade fair. Lu Ping was slightly startled. It was actually the treasure pavilion again. He did not know if this person was the shopkeeper of the treasure pavilion that he met when he was trading for the silver capital spirit flame. In addition, Lu Ping also placed 150 high-grade spirit stones on each of the 3 stone platforms to exchange for mid-grade mystic ranked spirit items. In fact, yesterday, Lu Ping had placed 400 high-grade spirit stones, hoping to trade for a mid-grade earth-ranked spirit item like the day before. Unfortunately, no one paid any attention to him for the entire day. Yesterday, after learning from Shentian spiritual master that what Zhenling really needed was a large number of mystic-ranked spirit items, Lu Ping simply began to use spirit stones to exchange for mystic-ranked spirit items. If using high-grade spirit stones to exchange for earth-ranked spirit items was only a possibility, then the possibility of exchanging for mystic-ranked spirit items was much higher. After all, mystic phase weren't like earth phase that could only be chanced upon and not sought after. Furthermore, the items that could be exchanged were high-grade spirit stones. Due to the difference in the concentration of spirit chi in spirit stones, high-grade spirit stones had many more miraculous uses than mid-grade and low-grade spirit stones. In addition, on the last day of the trade fair, many impossible things seemed to have a reason to become logical. Lu Ping's 3 stone platforms had a total of 450 high-grade spirit stones, and he had exchanged for a total of 13 mid-grade and high-grade mystic-ranked spirit items. Although it was extremely unexpected for Lu Ping, this kind of good luck was naturally something that Lu Ping could not ask for more. In addition to the various items exchanged for other miscellaneous items, Lu Ping's 3 days in the underground palace could be considered to be fruitful. After packing up the items, Lu Ping did not wait for the profound sky sect's evening bell to ring. Instead, he placed a low-grade mystic-ranked spirit item into a notch in the corner of the small house. With a flash of golden light, Lu Ping had already disappeared from the small house. The method of leaving the underground palace was different from the method of entering. When entering, Lu Ping only needed to use spirit stones to exchange for the medium of teleportation. If he wanted to leave, he needed every cultivator who entered the underground palace to use a low-grade mystic-ranked spirit item as the medium to activate the teleportation array. This low-grade mystic-ranked spirit item would then become the profound sky sect's reward for hosting this trade fair. When Lu Ping reappeared, he was already in a woodshed in the backyard of a family in the profound Sky Ancient City. Lu Ping's divine sense swept across and found that although this family was also a cultivator, they were all ordinary blood condensation cultivators. This family was also located in a remote area of the profound Sky Ancient City. Without alerting anyone, Lu Ping easily passed through the simple restriction that this family's cultivators had set up in the small courtyard. Then, he walked towards the place where he had previously agreed to meet Xie Tianyang and Sang Yu. In the heavenly fragrance tea house, Lu Ping had changed his appearance the last time he drank tea. Naturally, the shopkeeper and the clever waiter did not recognize him. Lu Ping tossed a mid-grade spirit stone over and had the waiter bring him to a quiet room. He instructed the waiter to serve a pot of top-grade spirit tea and 3 teacups. The waiter understood tacitly. He knew that Lu Ping was telling him that 2 more guests would be arriving in a while and that he only needed to bring the guests to this quiet room. After the waiter left, Lu Ping set up a restriction on the tea table. Only then did he drip a drop of amethyst honey into the teapot. The fragrance overflowed, but it was contained by the restriction on the tea table. This prevented the fragrance from permeating the entire tea house like the last time and startling hundreds of customers who were drinking tea. In the end, The name of the amethyst royal jelly spread throughout the entire profound sky ancient city. When the cup of spirit tea was finished, footsteps could be heard from outside the quiet room. The waiter had already brought Xie Tianyang and Sang Yu in. Xie Tianyang also tossed a mid-grade spirit stone behind him and said generously, "Take it, it's your reward." The waiter happily caught it and sang a beautiful yes. However, he thought to himself, just now, that senior also rewarded me with a mid-grade spirit stone, but he looked indifferent. Although this one also rewarded me with a mid-grade spirit stone, it's like he's giving me a huge gift. He even wants me to be grateful to him. Although these two seniors are generous, there's still a gap between them. However, my luck has been off the charts recently. In just a short month, I've earned 3 mid-grade spirit stones as tips, which is equivalent to my salary for this period of time. Xie Tianyang didn't know if the happy waiter had lowered his status after receiving the reward. However, Lu Ping could tell from Xie Tianyang's tone that he had brought good news. "Brother Xie, Brother Sang, sit down and have a taste of this spirit tea." Lu Ping invited the two to take a seat. Xie Tianyang said first, "I've taken a risk this time, but you're only treating us to tea. How stingy." Sang Yu took the tea from Lu Ping and thanked him. Then, he took a sip and his eyes lit up. Xie Tianyang, who was at the side, said, however, the matter was finally settled. The heavenly profound sect changed the method of exchange at the last moment. Fortunately, this Xie's eyes and hands were sharp. There were many people who were eyeing the high-grade heaven tier Fey. It was also thanks to the sect that I didn't return the high-grade Fey that I extorted from teacher. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to obtain the spirit vein essence milk. Xie Tianyang placed a jade bowl on the tea table and pushed it in front of Lu Ping. He wasn't afraid that Lu Ping wouldn't hand over the boiling sky sword technique. He picked up the teacup in front of him and noticed that Sang Yu had already finished a cup of hot tea and was about to pour a second one. Xie Tianyang pursed his lips and said, "Brother Sang, why are you in such a hurry? It's like a cow chewing on a peony. You're the spirit-taming sect's Empyrean walker. Aren't you afraid of being seen as a joke? This tea has to be tasted." Sang Yu didn't say anything. He filled the second cup and started drinking again. At this moment, Xie Tianyang let out a strange cry and glared at Lu Ping. "No way. You put purple crystal honey in it." Lu Ping, who had just thrown a jade scroll with the boiling sky sword technique in front of Xie Tianyang, smiled and said nothing. Xie Tianyang, on the other hand, drank the spirit tea faster than Sang Yu. He grabbed the teapot and poured himself a cup of tea as he said, "Extravagant. This is too extravagant. What a waste of God's gift." No one knew if he was talking about himself, Sang Yu, or Lu Ping. The three of them chatted for a while before leaving the quiet room and going their separate ways. Lu Ping was about to go downstairs when he saw the waiter hurrying over. He stopped Lu Ping and said, "Senior, please wait. My shopkeeper wants to see you." Lu Ping's expression changed when he heard this. Then, he returned to normal and said, "Do you know why your shopkeeper wants to see me?" The waiter smiled apologetically and said, "How would I know? Senior will know when you see the shopkeeper." Lu Ping thought that his movements were well hidden. The shopkeeper definitely wouldn't recognize him as the person who had spread the news of exchanging purple crystal royal jelly for lightning tribulation water. "So," he said, "lead the way." Before Lu Ping could take a few steps, the shopkeeper had already rushed over. His eyes lit up when he saw Lu Ping. He said, "Are you Lu Xianping of the North Sea?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "That's me. Why is the shopkeeper looking for me?" The shopkeeper smiled and said, "I just received an order from the sect. It's Qing Li Laozu who wants to see you." "Oh." Lu Ping nodded and seemed to have understood something. He said, "Please lead the way, shopkeeper." The shopkeeper walked forward and said, "You don't have to be so polite. My surname is Shen, and I'm a second-generation disciple of Tianxian sect. My cultivation is not good enough, so I can only run this tea house for the sect to make a living." Chapter 849. Lu Ping had heard of the mysterious Sky Mirror Lake for a long time, but it wasn't a place where people could come and enjoy the scenery as they pleased. As the foundation of the mysterious sky sect and the location of the dojo, even ordinary disciples of the mysterious sky sect couldn't come here. At this moment, a faint white mark appeared on the surface of the mysterious sky mirror lake. A small boat seemed to be moving slowly but was actually moving quickly toward the pavilion at the center of the lake. The pavilion at the center of the lake was made of some unknown material. It floated on the surface of the water, and there was an old man with gray hair and beard sitting at the side of the pavilion. He held a fishing rod in his hand, and on the stone table in the pavilion, there was tea and other things to entertain guests. Next to the tea, there were 2 brocade boxes, one large and one small, placed on the stone table. The brocade boxes didn't have anything like a spirit sealing talisman on them, so Lu Ping couldn't guess what was inside. However, after the small boat approached, Lu Ping could clearly see that the 2 brocade boxes were engraved with countless runes, causing the 2 boxes to have the effect of sealing spirits. Spirit nurturing box. A thought flashed through Lu Ping's mind. Even if the spirit nurturing box itself was a treasure, how valuable would the item inside be? The small boat arrived in front of the pavilion, and Lu Ping quickly entered the pavilion. He cupped his hands toward the old man and said, "Senior Qing Li, we meet again." The old man fishing next to the pavilion was the 5th great cultivator of the mysterious sky sect that Lu Ping had met twice before, Qing Li Laozu. Qing Li Laozu slowly withdrew the fishing rod in his hand and pointed at the round stool next to the stone table. His eyes indicated that Qing Li should sit first. Then, he threw the bait on the hook into the lake and sat on the stone bench next to the 2 spirit nurturing boxes. He didn't care about the fishing rod that was thrown into the lake. Qing Li Laozu picked up the teacup on the stone table and took 2 sips. The teacup was made of 1,000-year warm jade. It could keep the tea at an appropriate temperature throughout the year, and the quality of the tea wouldn't change at all. This piece of warm jade was equivalent to a 3rd-level spirit material. "You exchanged for our sect's spiritual vein essence milk in the underground palace?" Qing Li Laozu's words were like a bolt from the blue that exploded in Lu Ping's ears. Lu Ping looked at Qing Li Laozu in shock. The Tianxian sect had indeed tampered with the formation in the underground palace. Otherwise, how could they have known that he had obtained the spiritual vein essence milk? Didn't that mean that his every move in the underground palace was known by the profound sky sect? Thinking back to the day when he, Xie Tianyang, and Sangyu plotted in the secret room, the profound sky sect knew that his identity as the person who spread the news of exchanging the purple crystal royal jelly for the tribulation lightning water was already known by the profound sky sect. This enigma order was quite audacious. There were hundreds of cultivators inside the underground palace. Many of them belonged to different forces. This move by the enigma order was making enemies. That alone would cause them to be isolated by the entire world of cultivation. Then, they would be suppressed. What was the profound sky sect trying to do? Lu Ping's heart was in a mess and he lost his composure. How could the expression on Lu Ping's face escape Qing Li Laozu's eyes? Qing Li Laozu seemed to have known that Lu Ping would have such a reaction. He smiled faintly and said, "You don't have to be so nervous. The profound sky sect naturally wouldn't do anything to the underground palace. There are emissaries from the 6 sacred lands there. Under their watchful eyes, how could the profound sky sect do something like this?" Lu Ping's heart finally calmed down. However, the fact that the profound sky sect knew that he had obtained the spiritual vein essence milk still made Lu Ping feel uncertain. Could it be that he had been exposed in the heavenly fragrance tea house? However, at that time, Lu Ping had already checked the quiet room he was in and found nothing amiss. Could it be because of Xie Tianyang? Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, and he heard Qing Li Laozu say, "That kid from the Purple Sun Palace didn't hide his identity when he came to the pavilion to exchange for the spiritual vein essence milk. How could his son Li Fire use the spiritual vein essence milk?" Although the spiritual vein essence milk is rare, for a large sect like the Purple Sun Palace that has gathered more spiritual veins than the profound sky sect, the amount of spiritual vein essence milk will only be more. With that kid's identity, if he really wanted the spiritual vein essence milk, would the Purple Sun Palace be stingy with him? Lu Ping suddenly understood and said, So Senior guessed that Xie Tianyang exchanged for the spiritual vein essence milk for someone else. Otherwise, Xie Tianyang could have returned to the sect and asked for it from his elders. Junior cultivates a water cultivation method and has a good relationship with Xie Tianyang. After the underground palace trade fair ended, we immediately met at the Heavenly Fragrance Tea House, so this spiritual vein essence milk is most likely what Junior needs. Qing Li Laozu nodded and said with a smile, originally, this spiritual vein essence milk and the tribulation lightning water that appeared at our sect's trade fair were all aimed at the cultivator who claimed to have the purple crystal royal jelly. However, that person either saw through the plans of the sects or never appeared at the trade fair. However, since little friend Lu has taken a liking to the spirit vein essence milk, you only need to tell this old man. There is no need to go around and beg that Xie Tianyang. Little friend Lu has saved the disciples of our sect and personally killed the cultivators of the Supreme Xian sect to avenge the deaths of our 2 direct disciples. Our sect should offer a portion of the spirit vein essence milk to thank you. Lu Ping repeatedly said he did not dare. He saw the fishing float that had been thrown into the lake suddenly sink, but it quickly floated up again. Qing Li Laozu sat to the side as if he did not see it. Lu Ping thought for a moment and asked, "May I ask Senior, the last time I visited you, I mentioned the suggestion I made to Senior. I wonder if Senior has any advice for me?" Last time, after Lu Ping rescued Yunjian and brought him back to the Tianxian ancient city, Qing Li Laozu had summoned Lu Ping for a secret discussion. At that time, Lu Ping had proposed the alliance of the 2 sects on a whim. However, this was only his own idea. At that time, he had only proposed it to test the attitude of the Tianxian sect. This was a matter of life and death for the 2 sects. Of course, this was not something that Lu Ping, a minor repairs who had not even condensed his Dharma power, could touch. Qing Li Laozu looked at Lu Ping with a smile that was not a smile, as if he had already seen through Lu Ping's intentions. And Lu Ping's expression did not change. If what he said before was just a flash of inspiration, now he asked again because he had made up his mind to make this matter happen after he returned to Zhenling. The current situation of the Tianxian sect was extremely delicate. The 5 Holy Lands had joined forces to suppress them, and some sects were willing to be the claws and teeth of the 5 Holy Lands. If they were not careful, they could completely decline. Even with the support of Pure Yang Laozu and the unexpected help of the Crystal Palace, their situation had not changed much. In the eyes of outsiders, the Tianxian sect was still in a situation where they were treading on thin ice. As the saying goes, the icing on the cake is not as good as providing charcoal in the snow. At this time, the Tianxian sect might be extremely eager to support any sect, not to mention that Zhenling's own strength was still very impressive. More importantly, from the news that the Tianxian sect had received from the North Sea these days, Zhenling's rise was rapid, and it might be able to achieve the power of the Filing sect in the North Sea in the future. If this was really the case, the Tianxian sect could be an ally of Zhenling in the central region. They could open the ultra-long-distance transmission array from Zhenling to the North Sea, re-establish the isolation between the North Sea and the central region, and help their identity as a large sect to be recognized by the entire cultivation world. With such a strong support, the Tianxian sect could also be used to relieve the aggressive pressure of the 5 Holy Lands, and it would be more conducive to the implementation of the strategy of abandoning the land and guarding the sea, keeping a low profile, and avoiding the sharp edge planned by 7 Fan Laozu. At this moment, the fishing float that was floating on the surface of the water sank again. This time, the fishing float sank even more thoroughly, and it didn't seem to have any intention of floating up anymore. Lu Ping was surprised. If he had guessed correctly, when the fishing float sank just now, the bait on the hook should have been eaten by the fish. Now that the fishing float had sunk, could it be that there were still fish eating the hook? However, he heard Qing Li Laozu laugh and say, "Here it comes." After saying that, he reached out to grab the fishing rod and pulled it up. A palm-sized spirit nurturing box hung on the fishing hook, and Qing Li Laozu brought it out of the lake. Qing Li Laozu took the small spirit nurturing box off the fishing hook and said, "The fish in this Tianxian mirror lake have all become spirits. If you want them to fish up 1 or 2 of the treasures that the senior cultivator put in the lake, you must first bribe them with bait. Otherwise, They won't give face even if it's for the sake of the old man. As he said that, Qing Li Laozu pointed at the 3 spirit nurturing boxes of different sizes on the tea table, including the one that had just been fished up, and said, "It's these 3 boxes that caused the old man to use a whole morning to fish them up." However, Lu Ping's face revealed a look of surprise, and he said, "May I ask, Senior, are the fish in this mirror lake Wuling fish?" Qing Li Laozu said with a smile, "What, even you've heard of them?" Lu Ping hurriedly said, "How many people in the cultivation world don't know the name of the Wuling Taoist soldier formation? It is said that there was a Wuling Laozu among the Laozu who founded your sect. With the 8,000 Wuling fish Taoist soldier formation, he blocked the attack of the demon clan's 100,000 demon soldiers in the coastal sea at the foot of the Qianqian mountain, and forced the demon clan to retreat from the 3,000 miles of sea near the Qianqian sect. As the Qianqian sect's sphere of influence, the demon clan in the coastal sea did not dare to invade for tens of thousands of years. The Wuling fish Taoist soldier formation can be said to be one of the most powerful Taoist soldiers in the cultivation world. I didn't expect to see it today." Qing Li Laozu nodded slightly, as if he was recalling the hardships and pioneering spirit of the predecessors following Lu Ping's words. He said, "The Qianqian sect has not experienced any war for thousands of years, and the Wuling fish Taoist soldier formation has not appeared in the cultivation world for thousands of years. Now, it can only swim in this mirror lake and do the work of guarding the house. Although it still has its legend in the cultivation world, I'm afraid that some people have long forgotten its strength." Lu Ping was still mulling over the hidden meaning in Qing Li's words when he heard Qing Li continue, "Take these 3 boxes. I'll have to trouble you to give the smallest one to your sect's fellow Daoist Tian Xiong. The larger one is a gift from our sect to your Tianling sect's sect master. As for the largest one, it's a thank you gift to our young friend." Chapter 850. Lu Ping knew very well why Qing Li Laozu had given gifts to Tian Xiong, Laozu, and his teacher, Tianling, Laozu. However, this was also something that surprised him. In the past, no large sect would take the initiative to curry favor with a medium-sized sect. Moreover, Junling was located in the North Sea. In the future, even if they wanted to send the teleportation formation to the Middle Earth and connect the North Sea and the Middle Earth's cultivation world, Junling should be the one asking the Qianqian sect. However, Qing Li Laozu's actions made people feel like they were asking Junling to speed up its rise and begging Junling to build the teleportation formation that connected the 2 cultivation worlds in the Qianqian sect in the future. It seemed that although he saw the crisis of the Qianqian sect being suppressed by the 5 sacred grounds, the crisis seemed to be much more serious than Lu Ping had imagined. It even reached the point where the Qianqian sect had to put down its reputation as a large, established force. If that was the case, was the alliance between Junling and the Qianqian sect right? According to Lu Ping's original plan, even if the Qianqian sect was suppressed by the 5 sacred grounds, the Qianqian sect was still a sect with nearly 20,000 years of history. It had been a large sect for more than 10,000 years. With such a heritage and the help of the Crystal Palace, which was also a sacred ground, even if the 5 sacred grounds wanted to suppress it, it would not be effective in a short period of time. Junling wanted to use the Qianqian sect's remaining prestige to rise while it had not lost its status as a large sect. Even if the Qianqian sect declined in the future, Junling would gradually grow stronger and leave the Middle Earth. Even if the Qianqian sect offended the 5 sacred grounds because of the Qianqian sect, it would not be worthwhile to go to the North Sea to deal with Junling. Lu Ping left the pavilion in the middle of the lake. When he passed by the Qianqian Mirror Lake, he wanted to use his divine telekinesis to explore the lake to see if he could find a Wuling fish. However, when his divine telekinesis entered the lake, he suddenly found a person who looked like him. Lu Ping was taken aback. This was obviously because his divine will was like a person looking into a mirror for the first time. He did not know that the light was reflected back, and he thought that there was another version of himself in the mirror. This mysterious heaven mirror lake was not a mirror lake, it was clearly a magic treasure, and an extremely tyrannical magic treasure. At the very least, when it reflected the spiritual sense of a cultivator, the cultivator would unknowingly fall for it, giving the feeling that there was a world inside the mirror lake that was the same as their surroundings. In the pavilion in the center of the lake, Qing Li Laozu watched Lu Ping's figure disappear into the distance. He silently sipped his tea, but at some point, a farmer-like old man had appeared in the pavilion. "Senior brother, can this Zhenling really grow up?" Qing Li Laozu put down the teacup and asked softly without turning his head. The farmer-like old man behind him was the current leader of the Heavenly Mystery Sect, the Pure Young Grand Cultivator Qi Fan Laozu. Who can say for sure? Old Ancestor 7 Fans squatted down and washed his muddy hands in the lake water. Then, while shaking his hands, he stood up and said, "Draw a line from the Heavenly Mystery Sect to the east. After passing through the storm ocean, it will be the dividing line between the cultivation world of the North Sea and the East Sea. However, the possibility of the structure of the East Sea changing is not high. Although the free and unfettered sect has risen, its predecessor's boudoir is inextricably linked to the Heavenly Moon sect. Not to mention that we are now at least nominally leaning towards the Crystal Palace. With the way the Crystal Palace does things, I'm afraid it will be difficult for a large sect to rise in the East Sea." Qi Fan Laozu looked at the lake water under his feet that had become muddy when he washed his hands. Streaks of white lightning-like figures passed through the muddy water and then disappeared into the lake. Instead, the muddy lake water strangely became clear again with a flash of white light. These white lights seemed to be devouring the mud that fell from Qi Fan Laozu's hands. Seeing this, Qing Li Laozu, who was sitting next to him, smiled bitterly and said, "Senior brother, the soil in your garden is filled with living soil, rolling spirit soil, 100 spirit dew, 1,000 wonder dew, and other precious things that can promote the growth of the spirit treasures in the garden. It can be said that every piece of soil is no less valuable than a blood condensation realm medicinal pill. Are you going to feed them to the fishies just like that?" Qi Fan Laozu ignored Qing Li Laozu's complaints and continued, "Although the situation of the North Sea's cultivation world seems to be in a state of disunity, the development of the North Sea's cultivation world has improved a lot in the past decade. It is said that a high-quality large spirit stone mine was discovered in the North Sea. The sects in the North Sea kept it a secret and then joined forces to sneak into the Middle Earth to steal the treasures left behind in the Yingtian dojo, allowing the North Sea's cultivation world to make a huge leap in a short period of time. Among them, the most obvious increase in strength is this Zhenling. If there is anyone in the North Sea who is most likely to rise to become a large sect, then this Zhenling is without a doubt. But this is where the problem lies. The North Sea has been isolated from the Middle Earth for thousands of years. Which sect would easily accept a request from an unknown overseas sect to build a super long-distance teleportation formation in their territory? At this point, Qing Li Laozu also began to understand a little. He continued Qing Li Laozu's words and said, "That's right. This Zhenling sent his most outstanding disciple to travel the Middle Earth. He was sure that this Lu Xianping was not an ordinary person. As expected, he became famous in the Middle Earth after the battle in the Western Wilderness, and then he killed Fan Yuqing. This Zhenling has some plans. If he makes trouble in the cultivation world as a junior disciple, the fight between the juniors will naturally not involve the sect. At worst, he will just sacrifice a potential cultivator who has not yet grown up. If he becomes famous, not only will he spread the name of Zhenling, but he will also show the potential of Zhenling's rise through Lu Xianping. This is a good way to ensure a good harvest." Qi Fan Laozu nodded and said, "Perhaps this is part of the reason. It's just that this Zhenling seems to be under attack at the moment. Not only do the sects in the North Sea cultivation world not want to see an absolutely powerful sect dominate the North Sea, the North Sea demon race also seems to want to regroup under the guidance of the primordial crocodile. Moreover, the Crystal Palace also wants to intervene in the North Sea. If Zhenling wants to break out of this situation, he will have to face the simultaneous suppression of these forces. It is also a heavy burden and a long way to go." Lu Ping hid his tracks after coming down from the Tianxian Mountains. He sent a message talisman to perfected Qi Xuanzai and perfected Shentian, who were waiting to participate in the Pure Young Dharma assembly in the Tianxian ancient city. Then, he returned to the Ying Shan Immortal Academy. Guo Tianshan Laozu had already announced to the public that he was going into closed-door cultivation a year ago. In reality, He had returned to the North Sea. Other than handing over all the matters in the Immortal Academy to perfected Qi Xuanzai, Liang Tianfeng Laozu was helping to oversee the Immortal Academy. In addition, there was also Chu Tiancheng Laozu's secret help. When Lu Ping returned to the Immortal Academy, it just so happened that Tiancheng Laozu was bringing a few disciples who had advanced to the blood condensation realm back to the North Sea. So, he delayed his return by a day and returned with Tiancheng Laozu. More importantly, he could save a top-grade spirit stone. The Immortal Academy had already doubled in size compared to before Lu Ping traveled to the Central Plains. Because of the secret cooperation between Tianfeng Laozu and Tiancheng Laozu, as well as the support of the North Sea True Spirit sect, and Junling's intention to use the Immortal Academy to train the disciples' combat experience, the Immortal Academy's influence in the Yingshan mountain range was growing rapidly. Many rogue cultivator forces were chased out of the Yingshan Immortal Academy's sphere of influence, and the Mountain Universe sect was completely suppressed. As for Long River Laozu and the others who had the support of the Jiyu clan, they were starting to show signs of resistance. Lu Ping returned to the cliff at the back of the Immortal Academy. In his cave abode above the Ying River, he took out the 3 spirit nurturing boxes. The 2 smallest ones were given to Tian Xiong Laozu and Tian Ling Laozu by Qing Li Laozu on behalf of the Heavenly Profound sect. Lu Ping naturally wouldn't open them. However, the largest spirit nurturing box was Lu Ping's own, so Lu Ping couldn't wait to open it. He placed his palm on the spirit nurturing box. The bluish-purple light flickered, and the surface of the spirit nurturing box seemed to have changed slightly. He couldn't see it clearly when he wanted to take a closer look. Lu Ping carefully opened the box. It was filled to the brim with water. Lu Ping dipped his hand into the water in the box suspiciously. He discovered that it was just ordinary water that had been contaminated with spiritual energy. If he had to point out something special, it would be that the spiritual energy in the water was abnormally abundant. Perhaps it was because the water had once flowed through a spirit vein, and from the looks of it, this spirit vein was of an extremely high grade. But what was this? Lu Ping couldn't figure it out. He could only look at the spirit nurturing box again. Only then did he discover that on the inner wall of the spirit nurturing box, there were 18 white egg-shaped objects the size of rice grains. Could these be fish eggs? Could they be Wuling fish eggs? Lu Ping's previous doubts and disappointment were immediately swept away. He carefully recalled the records he had read about Wuling fish, especially the memory of the pure yang soul of Ying Tian sect's Fei Tian Laozu. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. It was exactly the same as the records and inherited memories. These must be Wuling fish eggs. A Dao soldier cultivated by Wuling fish, together with a Dao soldier formation, could form one of the best Dao soldier formations in the cultivation world. Back then, Wuling Laozu was so famous, mostly because of the Dao soldier formation that he cultivated. He didn't expect that the Heavenly Profound sect would give him the Wuling fish eggs as a gift. In his excitement, Lu Ping suddenly remembered that although the Wuling fish was famous in the cultivation world, it was extremely difficult to cultivate them into Dao soldiers. Back then, Wuling Laozu spent more than 600 years to cultivate 18 Wuling fish into 8,000 Wuling fish Dao soldiers from the blood condensation realm to the transcendence realm. Before that, Wuling Laozu had been unknown in the cultivation world. Wuling fish was originally called sharp-ridge fish. It was originally a rather brave fish demon race in the coastal waters. However, this fish demon was born with low intelligence and had little room for improvement in cultivation. Therefore, humans and demons didn't pay much attention to them. However, Wuling Laozu could see that this fish demon was extraordinary. He spent more than 600 years cultivating this fish demon and trained them into Dao soldiers. In order to unleash the power of the sharp-ridge fish Dao soldiers, Wuling Laozu even refined an entire river called Wuling into the formation. His Dao name, Wuling Laozu, was also named because of this formation. Wuling Laozu was unknown in the Heavenly Profound sect. His cultivation was also focused on the sharp-ridge fish. Although his cultivation was improving, his ability was extremely weak. However, this situation changed when the Heavenly Profound sect faced a crisis of annihilation. With the 8,000 sharp ridge fish Dao soldiers, Wuling Laozu single-handedly stopped the attack of 100,000 demon soldiers in the coastal waters under the heavenly profound mountain. The battle lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. In the end, 20,000 of the 100,000 demon soldiers retreated in defeat with casualties. The heavenly profound sect was saved. From then on, the heavenly profound sect was established as a large sect that lasted for more than 10,000 years. Wuling Laozu's prowess shocked the world. The sharp ridge fish Dao soldiers were also called Wuling fish because of the Wuling River formation that Wuling Laozu refined. Chapter 851. Dozens of miles away from the North Sea's Huanyu Island, in the depths of the sea, the North Sea demons had naturally attracted the attention of the North Sea practitioners ever since they had occupied this place at all costs. What exactly was there that the primordial crocodile clan had convinced the other clans to join forces to stabilize the front line between the humans and demons here? For more than 20 years, they had not hesitated to pay the price of dozens of core forging adepts and several Dharma adept. However, in the cultivation world of the North Sea, be it the cultivators of the human clan or the demon clan, none of them knew that in the hollow belly of an underwater mountain range not far from the territory occupied by the demon clan, there was a small teleportation array that could directly connect to the Middle Earth. The teleporter flashed. After a decade or two, Lu Ping had once again returned to the North Sea. Along with him were Tiancheng Laozu and a few disciples who had just advanced to the blood condensation stage. They were to be brought to Zhenling to receive the inheritance of their techniques. After that, they would stay on Tianling Mountain to train and be completely integrated into Zhenling. Lu Ping looked at the formation that had been set up around the teleporter. In the middle of the mountain that had been submerged by the seawater, a space with a circumference of 20 feet had been created to keep the seawater out. And near this small teleporter that connected to the central plains, there was another teleporter. Lu Ping could see that this teleporter had not been built for a long time. Beside him, Tiancheng Laozu smiled and explained, in recent years, the North Sea demons have been patrolling the waters outside the mountain range more and more closely. It is possible for us Dharma adepts to avoid them and sneak in here, but it is extremely difficult for core forging adepts. If we bring along these burdens like we do now and still don't get discovered, the old man would rather challenge Dao Sheng. Later on, your martial uncle Xian Chen simply built a teleportation formation in the belly of the mountain, directly connecting it to the rear hall of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. This way, there was no need to worry about being discovered by the demon cultivators outside the mountain. Several of the fourth-generation disciples, who were directly called a burden by Tiancheng Laozu, could not help but show a trace of shame on their faces. But what surprised them was that Tiancheng Grandmaster, the second generation of Laozu, actually took the initiative to explain the changes in the cave residence to the third-generation Uncle Master, Immortal Lu Xianping, the elder of the Academy of Immortal. His tone was completely like a peer talking to someone of the same generation, but Lu Xianping was able to accept it calmly, without the slightest respect and fear that a junior in the core forging realm would have when he met Dharma idol Laozu. They had already entered the blood condensation realm and were chosen from the Academy of Immortal to return to the North Sea to inherit the legacy. They were extremely intelligent people and knew that this Uncle Master Lu Xianping before them seemed to be extremely famous in the Central Plains. Even Uncle Master Qi Xuanzai, who was a deacon and had a high status in the Academy of Immortal, and Uncle Master Xian Fang, who was a master of alchemy, seemed to have great respect for him. Thinking of this, these disciples looked at Lu Ping with even more fervor. At the same time, they could not help but plant a few seeds in their hearts. In the future, if they could also be like this elder in front of them and gain the recognition and respect of the second and third generation disciples as a fourth generation disciple, how proud would that be? As he emerged from the back hall of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, Lu Ping could not help but feel a different kind of emotion when he saw the familiar scene before him. Zhenling was still his hometown in the end. The cultivator on duty in the Heaven's Spirit Hall was no longer the profound sage that Lu Ping was familiar with. Instead, it was a second-generation cultivator called Profound Firmament. Although Lu Ping did not recognize him, he clearly knew Lu Ping. As soon as he saw Lu Ping, he cried out in joy, "You've returned, junior nephew Lu?" Although Lu Ping was puzzled, he still bowed and said, "I greet Uncle Master." Profound Firmament still wanted to say something, but he heard Laozu Tian Cheng say impatiently, "Enough, Junior Profound Firmament. These are a few good seedlings that we brought back from the North Sea this time. Take them to find a suitable legacy cultivation method." After sending off the enthusiastic Profound Firmament sage, Lu Ping turned to Tian Cheng Laozu and said with a smile, "Uncle Master, this disciple will first make a trip to Chonghua Manor." Tian Cheng Laozu casually waved his hand and said, "Hurry up and scram. However, don't forget that you promised to fight with the old man, otherwise, be careful that the old man doesn't tear down your Huangli Island." Lu Ping laughed, "Uncle Master must be joking. Huangli Island doesn't belong to a disciple, it belongs to the sect." Tian Cheng Laozu could not be bothered to pay attention to him. With a fireball, his entire body disappeared into the scattering sparks. It seemed that he had returned to his dwelling. In Chonghua Manor, Tianling Laozu, who had been in charge of Zhenling for many years, was becoming more and more dignified. She looked even more graceful and elegant, but her gaze was as sharp as a knife, and as sharp as a knife that could see through people's hearts. However, when she saw that Lu Ping had returned, a look of joy appeared on her face. She smiled and said, "After not seeing you for so many years, your cultivation has become even more profound. Even I can't see through you. I'm afraid that it won't be long before even I have the ability to guide you." In the past few years, Tianling Laozu's cultivation had not increased much. Many practitioners in the sect thought that it was because Tianling Laozu was too busy with the affairs of the sect that his cultivation had been delayed. Only a few Dharma adepts in the sect knew that if one were to talk about the growth of strength, among the second generation of Dharma adepts in Zhenling, Tianling Laozu was ranked second only to Jiang Tianlin Laozu, who was about to face his first lightning trial. The one who felt this the most was Tian Qin Laozu. Originally, the two of them were equal in strength. However, now that Tian Qin Laozu and Tianling Laozu met, Tianling Laozu could clearly feel the pressure from Tianling Laozu. Tian Qin Laozu and Tianling Laozu had been fighting each other for hundreds of years. Tian Qin had been in charge of Huangli Island for more than 10 years, but his cultivation and strength were gradually being surpassed by Tianling Laozu, who had to deal with thousands of affairs every day. How could the proud Tian Qin Laozu take this lying down? Therefore, Tian Qin Laozu simply gave up his duty of being in charge of Huangli Island. When he returned to Zhenling, he announced that he would go into closed-door training. He was prepared to increase his level of cultivation and then compete with Tianling Laozu. Only Lu Ping knew that the main reason for Tianling Laozu's improvement in strength was because Lu Ping had passed on the Linhai wave listening technique to his teacher, which was related to the mid and late Dharma stage. This allowed his teacher's Linhai wave listening technique to be completely perfected. His teacher's practice of the Linhai wave listening technique became more and more proficient in the practice of the Dharma stage. Many of the previously obscure and different parts of the practice were easily solved, and some of the subsequent understanding of the remarkable techniques were also mastered. The Linhai wave listening scripture was a complete inherited cultivation technique left behind by the Feiling sect. It was a cultivation technique that Lu Ping couldn't even explain to this day. The Linhai wave listening scripture was a cultivation technique that was derived from the Linhai wave listening scripture. The Linhai wave listening scripture had been refined by the Dharma cultivators of the Feiling sect for generations. It had long become an extremely mature and outstanding cultivation technique. Tian Qin and Tianling, the two Laozu's talents and temperaments were about the same. However, the quality of the technique that Tianling Laozu practiced was obviously higher than Tian Qin Laozu's. This was why, although Tianling Laozu's level of cultivation was not much faster than Tian Qin Laozu's, the growth in strength was second only to Tianling Laozu's. Lu Ping told his teacher about the general situation of his travels in Central Plains over the years. He also emphasized his experience in Tianqian ancient city and took out the gift that Qing Li Laozu had given to his teacher. Tianling Laozu did not open the spirit nurturing box. Instead, he pondered for a moment before asking Lu Ping, "What do you think of the current situation in Tianqian city?" Lu Ping had already considered these matters. When he heard the question, he said, "The Tianxian sect situation seems to be much worse than I had imagined. Originally, I thought that the Tianxian sect had a history of nearly 20,000 years and was the strongest among all the large sects. Even if they were suppressed by the 5 Holy Lands, they would not decline in less than a few hundred years. These few hundred years would be enough for our sect to rise again and gain the recognition of our position in the Central Plains training world with the help of the Tianxian sect. We would then be able to re-establish the long-distance teleporter between the two worlds and bring the North Sea back into the training world. However, from the looks of it now, I'm afraid that the Tianxian sect will not be able to hold on until then." However, Tianling Laozu smiled and said, "Not necessarily. I think the Tianxian sect seems to have a lot of follow-up measures. They may be able to hold on, not to mention that they have the support of the Crystal Palace." Lu Ping was puzzled. Then why would the Tianxian sect take the initiative to make friends with us? In Central Plains, the East Sea, and even the South Sea, there are many forces whose strength is similar to our sect. There are even some who are stronger than us. Moreover, in the game between these giant sects, we, the Zhenling sect, are not enough. Tianling Laozu smiled and said, "The Tianxian sect endured the humiliation and gave up thousands of miles of territory. It seems that they are showing weakness to the 5 Holy Lands, but in fact, they want to concentrate their strength. Like a clenched fist, it is possible to throw this fist out quickly and powerfully. To where? It can't be to the 5 Holy Lands, can it? Is it to the Tianxian sect?" Tianling Laozu shook his head and said, "The Tianxian sect is a pawn of the 5 Holy Lands, and the Tianxian sect is now a pawn of the Crystal Palace in name. The Tianxian sect jumped into the game between the Crystal Palace and the 5 Holy Lands, but it is to be able to completely jump out of the chessboard so that they can play the game themselves." Lu Ping was not surprised. Instead, he seemed to think it was natural. He said, "It seems that the Tianxian sect has not given up the temptation of becoming the 7th Holy Land in the cultivation world. However, where do they want to hit with their clenched fist? Does Qi Fan Laozu have the confidence to become a real spirit? If he fails, I am afraid that the fate of the Ying Tian sect will soon fall on the Tianxian sect. Tens of thousands of years of pioneering and forging ahead, the persistent dream of several generations, how can it be so easy to give up? Standing at the height of Qi Fan Laozu, I am afraid there are many things that are beyond their control. As for the place where the Tianxian sect will break out of the game, if I am not wrong, it should be near the sea." "Near the sea?" Lu Ping suddenly understood and said, "The demon tribes near the Sea of Storms, and a pincer attack. This is a good plan for the Tianxian sect. I am afraid this is the price for our sect to become a large sect in the future and to be recognized by the Tianxian sect. To cross the Sea of Storms, appear behind the demon tribes near the sea, and attack the Tianxian sect from the front and back, helping the Tianxian sect to expand their sphere of influence to the sea. In this way, we can avoid the conflict between the 5 Holy Lands and the Crystal Palace." "I think so. The Tianxian sect must have made arrangements in the sea, and that Wuling Yu Taoist soldier must be one of them. Also, they are sure that the resources in the sea are enough for the development of the Tianxian sect." Tianling Laozu nodded and agreed with Lu Ping's speculation. "However, to cross the stormy ocean, we'll need a treasured ship. It's not easy for our sect to have a second great cultivator, but it's not impossible. It's just that where are we going to find a treasured ship? Although our sect isn't as tight on funds as before, the cultivation base of many cultivators in our sect has also increased greatly. It's really difficult for us to find the time to build a treasured ship." "Yes, a treasure ship," Tianling Laozu murmured to himself. Chapter 852. Lu Ping went to visit Celestial Phenomenon Laozu and told him about what he had seen and heard in Central Plains to Celestial Phenomenon Laozu. Then, he left behind a gift from Tianxian sect's Qingli Laozu and left. It had only been a few hours since Lu Ping returned to Tianling Mountain, but the news had already spread throughout Tianling Mountain. Since Zhenling had the secret teleportation formation that allowed them to travel to Central Plains and had also built a celestial academy in the Yingshan mountain range, news about Central Plains was naturally much smoother. Yingshan Immortal Academy was still a secret to most of the cultivators in Junling, and the super long-distance teleportation formation in the underwater mountain range was even more of a secret. Even if perfected Xian Fang, perfected Qi Xuancai, perfected Xian Tian, and the others could only use the super long-distance teleportation formation in the middle of the mountain range to reach Central Plains, they had no idea where exactly the mountain range was. Even so, Lu Ping had made a name for himself in Central Plains, and Junling still spread the news rather quickly within the sect. Lu Ping did not care about this, because Jiang Tianlin Laozu was now at the most crucial stage of advancing to the mid-Dharma stage. He was currently preparing for his closed-door training at the top of Tianling Mountain, so Lu Ping did not visit him again. Instead, he greeted a few of his senior sisters and returned to Huangli Island through the teleportation formation. It had been 20 years since Lu Ping left Huangli Island. Walking on the crisscross streets of Huangli Island and looking at the cultivators coming and going, Lu Ping felt that things had remained the same, but people had changed. The development of Huangli Island had reached a bottleneck. Because Huangli Island's area was limited, and the resources in the outer seas were also limited, in order to attract more cultivators to Huangli Island, Junling had to expand its sphere of influence in the outer seas. In this way, it was inevitable that they would have to fight with the North Sea Demon clan of the Deep Sea Demon region. Lu Ping walked straight to his cave mansion on the island, but he gradually found that there was something wrong with his surroundings. After thinking about it for a moment, he remembered that he had encountered several patrol teams of Junling cultivators, but none of these cultivators recognized Lu Ping. Along the way, they passed by many shops. Even though the number of shops here had increased by a lot, it was impossible not to have a shopkeeper who knew Lu Ping. It seemed that something had happened on the island. As he thought of that, Lu Ping's expression remained unchanged. However, his divine sense was like a gathering thundercloud in the sky above him, growing thicker and thicker. Strange cries rang out from the thundercloud, echoing in the ears of all the cultivators on Huangli Island. The sound was somewhat deep, yet it was unusually distant. It was as though it was a horn that pierced through the ancient times. It also seemed as though it carried an incomparable arrogance as it announced its return. All the cultivators on Huangli Island were alarmed. When they raised their heads and looked in the direction of the sound, they saw a seemingly invisible but distinct existence condensing in the sky, forming a strange cloud that had condensed together. In the middle of the cloud, there were many existences that only revealed their scales and claws. However, they gave off a feeling of mystery and majesty to those who saw them. Was this divine sense materialization? A knowledgeable cultivator exclaimed, "When did another Dharma manifestation Laozu come to Huangli Island? Who provoked this person?" Lu Ping formed a hand seal and released it. The divine sense that had condensed above his head was like a dam that had accumulated enough water and suddenly collapsed. The divine sense poured out in all directions, instantly engulfing the entire Huangli Island. The situation on the island was instantly presented in Lu Ping's divine sense. A cold snort came from the east side of Huangli Island, facing the sea. An illusory giant ape rose from the east coast and pounced in the direction of Lu Ping. Unexpectedly, it was also a divine sense materialization. This was Tian Shu Laozu's attack. A cultivator on Huangli Island shouted out loudly. A portion of the divine sense that had spread throughout the entire island suddenly condensed into a strange flood dragon in the sky. With a flick of its tail, the flood dragon split the giant ape into two. When the cultivators on Huangli Island saw that the divine sense materialization of Tian Shu Laozu had its lower body destroyed by an unknown cultivator, they all cried out in alarm. Although the giant ape did not expect the opponent to have the strength to make the first move, its divine sense was different. Even though its lower body was destroyed, it did not hinder the giant ape from rushing forward. Its pair of ape palms tore the strange flood dragon in front of it into pieces. It turned out to be a situation where both sides suffered. However, those who were observant could clearly see that the giant ape had launched a sneak attack while the strange flood dragon was formed in a hurry. If that was the case, Tian Shu Laozu might not be as good as this mysterious cultivator who came to Huangli Island. At this time, Lu Ping had already used his divine sense to investigate the entire situation on Huangli Island. The divine sense that had spread throughout the island had all returned to his body. He turned his head to look in the direction of Tian Shu Laozu, then turned around and headed back to his cave residence. Lu Ping finally understood the biggest difference in the current Huangli Island. The density of the spiritual energy on the island had dropped too much. When Lu Ping left Huangli Island, he had already raised the quality of the spirit vein on Huangli Island to a medium-grade spirit vein. Furthermore, there were several scattered spirit veins on the island that were specially opened to be used as cave residences for the cultivators on the island. Furthermore, through the island's protective array, the scattered spiritual energy from the spirit vein was dispersed to the entire Huangli Island. As a result, the density of the spiritual energy on Huangli Island was several times higher than other places. Although these measures did not have too obvious of a boost to the cultivators' cultivation, they still benefited all the cultivators on Huangli Island. They had greatly increased the cultivators' recognition of Zhenling and Huangli Island. Now, the density of the spiritual energy on the entire Huangli Island had dropped back to its original level. Furthermore, through his divine sense, Lu Ping could clearly see that the cave residences that were opened by the scattered spirit veins had long been abandoned. The density of the spiritual energy at the location of his cave residence had also dropped significantly. Most of the medium-grade main spirit vein that Lu Ping had painstakingly condensed had been changed. The continuous flow of spiritual energy had converged on the eastern coast, forming an area with extremely dense spiritual energy. That was the place where Tian Shu Laozu's spiritual sense giant ape had appeared previously. Lu Ping's actions naturally made everyone understand that Huangli Island had an impressive cultivator. However, they were not sure who else in the North Sea would dare to so brazenly provoke Zhenling. Most of the cultivators were quietly waiting for the development of the situation. At this time, Lu Ping had already seen Hu Lili standing at the entrance of the cave residence. She seemed to have already guessed that he had returned. "You're back." It was still the same smile, and the greeting was as light as water. However, it caused Lu Ping's heart to surge with a sense of guilt. He could naturally see the trace of exhaustion hidden behind Hu Lili's beautiful smile. Lu Ping had established the foundation of Huangli Island, but this foundation had always been managed by Hu Lili alone. Most of the time, Lu Ping was not on Huangli Island. Even when he returned to the island, he would mostly be in secluded cultivation. Most of the time, Lu Ping did not care about the situation on the island. This was a kind of trust that ordinary people could not reach. However, behind this absolute trust, Hu Lili had racked her brains and worked day and night. She was able to become the actual controller of Huangli Island with a mid-core forging stage minor repairs. In addition to the identity and status that Lu Ping had brought her, she relied more on her own intelligence and methods. However, when she encountered an opponent who possessed absolute strength and did not abide by the rules, her control over Huangli Island inevitably collapsed. She could only try her best to protect the cave residence that Lu Ping had left on the island, as well as the core of the island's protective formation. Therefore, Hu Lili was also feeling guilty. She felt guilty for not being able to live up to Lu Ping's trust. She felt guilty for not being able to fight back in the face of the opponent's suppression. "You've returned. You've worked hard." Lu Ping touched Hu Lili's slightly pale face due to fatigue. He said, "Go and rest. Leave the rest to me. After 3 days, you will still need to continue to manage this island." The corners of Hu Lili's mouth finally raised into a slightly proud and happy smile. There was even a trace of mischievousness in it. She was like a child who had been wronged, but persisted in her stubbornness. This was because she knew that sooner or later, all these grievances would be returned to the other party because of the return of her guardian. Now, the person who had helped her vent her anger had finally returned. Moreover, it was not surprising that he was going to help her vent her anger. Hu Lili was relieved because of Lu Ping's comfort. She was happy because he did not hesitate to protect her. She was mischievous because her opponent was about to get his revenge. She was proud of her choice of guardian. Hu Lili gracefully returned to the cave residence and waited behind the formation plate of the island's protective formation. She knew that what was going to happen next was far from what she could participate in. Only by guarding the formation plate of the island's protective formation plate could she make Lu Ping feel completely at ease. Lu Ping smiled at Hu Lili. It seemed that he was also saying, "Prepare to watch a good show." Under Hu Lili's surprised gaze, a wine glass suddenly grew bigger and bigger in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping knocked on the wine glass gently and the wine glass started to spin with a buzzing sound. Lu Ping said softly to the wine glass, "Let's begin." The wine glass suddenly shook while it was spinning. A little girl suddenly popped her head out of the wine glass and looked at Hu Lili curiously. Then, she floated above the wine glass and made a gesture of trying very hard with her hands. She shouted, "Come on, come on." The wine glass under the little girl's feet spun faster and faster. The woo-woo sound of the wind became more and more urgent. Hu Lili, who was at the side, suddenly had a change of expression. Then, she became surprised. As the person who had set up the protective formation of Huangli Island, no one knew better than Hu Lili about the direction of Huangli Island's earth veins. At this moment, Hu Lili could clearly feel that every time the little girl shouted "Come on," the earth veins of Huangli Island were undergoing a huge change. It was the spirit vein. Hu Lili immediately realized what the little girl was doing. Following the change in the earth veins, the spiritual energy in the main vein that was guided by Tian Shu Laozu was rapidly flowing back to the cave residence where Lu Ping was. Who was this little girl? She actually dared to fight for the spirit vein under the nose of Fa Xiong Laozu. What was even more unbelievable was that she actually succeeded. "How dare you? Who are you? How dare you behave atrociously on Huangli Island?" An angry roar almost shook the entire Huangli Island. Chapter 853. The barrenness of the North Sea made the sects more willing to gather the scarce resources. This way, the sects would be able to concentrate their advantages and increase their strength to the greatest extent possible. Zhenling had a legacy of 10,000 years, but this kind of legacy could not be compared to the likes of the Profound Sky sect. The Profound Sky sect had a legacy of nearly 20,000 years, but it had at least 13 to 14,000 years of history to become a large-scale sect. Zhenling's so-called legacy of 10,000 years was only able to become a large-scale sect 6,000 years ago, when Taishan Laozu became a true spirit. Before that, it had been lingering between the small and medium-sized sects. In the end, because of the lack of a strong foundation, although Taishan Laozu became a true spirit with his own talent, it had only been 1,000 years since he left, and Zhenling had returned to the ranks of the middle-sized sects. However, with Taishan Laozu's influence, Zhenling was able to maintain its status as a middle-sized sect in the 5,000 years after Zhenling left, and did not fall back to the ranks of the small sects. Therefore, even though Zhenling had a long history of inheritance, after 10,000 years, the number of large-scale spirit veins that formed in the entire Tianling Mountain did not exceed 3 or 4. If the Foundation Island was like this, the situation of the other islands could be imagined. Zhenling had 36 middle-sized islands. Other than a few islands that were located in strategic locations that maintained the scale of a middle-sized spirit vein, the other islands were only at the level of a few small spirit veins. For the other small islands, being able to use small spirit veins to maintain the island's protective formation was already considered rich. As for the other small islands, there was no need to mention them. Among all of Zhenling's subsidiary islands, only Huangli Island, which was managed by Lu Ping, could be considered a special case. Zhenling had always had a tradition of using the spirit veins of the subsidiary islands to supplement the main vein of Tianling Mountain. Usually, when the spirit vein on an island had accumulated to a middle-sized spirit vein, Zhenling would use a formation to draw it to the main peak of Tianling Mountain and fuse it with the main vein, raising the quality of the main vein. The quality of Tianling Mountain's main vein was also formed through this method after several generations of Tianling Mountain's cultivators over tens of thousands of years of accumulation. On other islands, the formation of a medium-sized spirit vein was often the result of several cultivators guarding the Zhenling spirit vein. It took hundreds or thousands of years and generations of effort to gradually take shape. This was not something that could be accomplished overnight. Because of this, when Zhenling wanted to reclaim the spirit vein, no matter how unwilling the cultivators guarding the island were, they couldn't stop him. This was because the spirit vein was the result of several generations of hard work and not the work of a single person. The true ownership of the spirit vein belonged to Zhenling. There was no doubt about this. Huangli Island was a special case. From the establishment and management of Huangli Island to the current Huangli Island, which was not even the size of a small island, the time taken to condense a mouth-watering medium-sized spirit vein was too short. Moreover, there was only one person who managed to do all of this, and that person was Lu Ping. Therefore, even though Huangli Island was prosperous and was almost like a monster that swallowed and spat out spirit stones and cultivation resources, none of the Laozu of Zhenling had the idea of taking everything from Huangli Island to Zhenling. Even though there were a few core forging cultivators who coveted Huangli Island, in the end, they couldn't make any waves. It wasn't that the Laozu of Zhenling looked down on it. On the contrary, the prosperity of Huangli Island was something that even the Laozu of Zhenling were envious of. It was because none of them could ask for it. Everyone in Zhenling knew that Huangli Island was the result of Lu Ping's independent development. Lu Ping had spent a lot of energy to develop Huangli Island, so they couldn't help but respect Lu Ping's achievements. Therefore, Huangli Island, which was like an exotic miniature island, stood as the most important stronghold of Zhenling in the open sea with a medium-sized spirit vein. To be honest, it wasn't easy for Lu Ping to accumulate this fortune. Most of it was obtained through battles of life and death. Therefore, in order to guard against the demon clan's surprise attack, Zhenling sent Tianlin Laozu and Tianqin Laozu to Huangli Island. These two Laozu did not use the spirit vein on Huangli Island to cultivate. This situation lasted until Tianshu Laozu returned to the top of Tianling Mountain to cultivate in seclusion because of Tianqin Laozu. Tianshu Laozu, who had just entered the transcendent stage, naturally took over Tianqin Laozu's position. When Tianshu Laozu arrived at Huangli Island, the first thing he did was to announce that he was going to take over the medium-sized spirit vein on Huangli Island. Although Hu Lili, Chen Lian, and the others tried their best to resist, they were no match for Tianshu Laozu's strength. Most of the main spirit vein under Lu Ping's cave abode was drawn to his cave abode by Tianshu Laozu. Only one branch of the spirit vein was left in Lu Ping's cave abode, which was barely enough to maintain the island's protective formation. After that, the island's patrol team that Lu Ping had promoted were all dismissed or transferred away by Tianshu Laozu. The patrol team that was re-established were made up of Tianshu Laozu's disciples, perfected Xuansu, perfected Xuanzhan, and the others' fourth-generation disciples, as well as second- and third-generation cultivators. That was not all. Many of the shops on Huangli Island were opened by Lu Ping and many of his friends. After Tianshu Laozu took control of Huangli Island, his disciples naturally had to set up shops on Huangli Island. However, the area of Huangli Island was limited after all. If one wanted to get a piece of the pie from the saturated Huangli Island, then they would have to drive away the original merchants and squeeze out a group of them. Huangli Island was like a hen that laid golden eggs. Otherwise, it would not have been coveted so much. With Tianshu Laozu's actions, there was naturally a debate within Zhenling. There were many who supported Lu Ping but not many who opposed Tianshu Laozu. No matter what, the matter of Huangli Island involved Laozu, the disciples in the sect would have to listen to the opinions of the few Dharma phase Laozu. However, at this time, the movement of the upper echelons of Zhenling was strange. Currently, the first generation of cultivators of Zhenling did not participate in the specific affairs of the sect. Tianxiong Laozu naturally would not worry about such a small matter. Tian Shui Laozu was in charge of the spirit stone mine on Frost Island. Tian Fan Laozu did not show up. Tian Kang Laozu went to Huanyu Island. Tian Lu Laozu had nothing to do with the world. Ever since Tianlin Laozu brought back a damaged treasure from Ying Tian Dojo, Tianjiang Laozu had been thinking about how to repair this damaged treasure. No one dared to disturb him at this time. The second generation of disciples of Zhenling had settled down, but Tian Lin and Tian Qin Laozu were in secluded cultivation. Tian Feng Laozu and Tian Cheng Laozu were nowhere to be found. Tian Shan Laozu had been away for more than 10 years. After returning to Tianling Mountain, he lived in seclusion and became very mysterious. This huge Zhenling was now supported by Liu Tianling Laozu, who was the sect master. At this time, many people finally understood that Tian Shu Laozu had chosen a good time. There were only 2 Laozu left in Zhenling, and these 2 Laozu had never been on good terms. Some well-informed cultivators used the information they had heard from the old cultivator of Zhenling about the grudges between the 2. In a short period of time, the news of the internal instability of Zhenling had spread all over the place. However, Liu Tianling Laozu was the sect master of Zhenling. He had been impartial all these years and had managed to make Zhenling prosper. The prestige of the sect master had allowed Liu Tianling Laozu to gain the upper hand. Originally, Tian Shu Laozu was no match for the current Liu Tianling Laozu, be it in terms of strength or influence. However, Tian Shu Laozu had chosen Huangli Island, which was a controversial topic within Zhenling. Moreover, he had grasped the crux of the problem. Whether or not Huangli Island still needed to be in Lu Ping's hands was the problem. Everyone knew that Lu Ping was the last disciple of the sect master of Zhenling, and he was also the disciple she was most proud of. From this point of view, it didn't matter if Liu Tianling Laozu was doing it for the sake of justice or not. If she made a decision in favor of Lu Ping on the issue of Huangli Island, the other Laozu in the sect wouldn't be able to do anything. Then, Liu Tianling Laozu would have to bear the reputation of shielding her own disciple and stealing the sect's property. This was what Tian Shu Laozu had planned a long time ago. It was a method to fight against Liu Tianling Laozu's prestige as the sect master. As long as he could restrain Liu Tianling Laozu, then why would Tian Shu Laozu care about the remaining voices of opposition? Who would be able to stop him? There wasn't a single Zhenling cultivator who would deny that Huangli Island was the result of Lu Ping's advocacy. There wasn't a single Zhenling cultivator who would deny that the prosperity of Huangli Island was the result of Lu Ping's painstaking efforts. However, all of these were inseparable from the rules, the traditions and rules of Zhenling for thousands of years. It was true that Huangli Island was developed by Lu Ping alone, but this couldn't be a reason for Lu Ping to occupy Huangli Island, let alone become his private property. Not to mention, without Zhenling's support, without the sect's strong support when the demon beasts besieged Huangli Island, and without the 3 Laozus coming to Huangli Island to hold the fort and deter the demon beasts in the North Sea, how could Huangli Island still be as stable as a mountain when it was isolated in the sea? Of course, the sect naturally had to compensate Lu Ping in other aspects when they took over Huangli Island. This was the right thing to do, and Zhenling would naturally not treat those who contributed to the sect unfairly. In fact, Tian Shu Laozu's plan was carried out very smoothly. On Huangli Island, Tian Shu Laozu easily took complete control of Huangli Island. Other than Lu Ping's lover, Xian Chen's disciple, Xian Hu, who fought to the death, none of Lu Ping's scoundrels who opposed the change of Huangli Island's guardian jumped out to make things difficult for him. This made Tian Shu Laozu secretly proud of the success of his plan, but at the same time, he also felt slightly uneasy in his heart. From the beginning to the end, Liu Tianling Laozu didn't say a single word about Huangli Island. It was as if he had been watching coldly as the foundation his disciple built was easily taken over by Tian Shu Laozu. This also made it so that Tian Shu Laozu didn't fall into the trap of protecting his own disciple and dividing the sect's public property. As for the third-generation disciples who supported Lu Ping, they didn't show up. This made Tian Shu Laozu feel that he seemed to have forgotten something. He didn't forget that when Zhenling was still a core forging sage, Xian Shu Laozu, because of Yin Xuanqu's transvestite bloodline, he was ordered to capture him. It was under Lu Ping's leadership that a dozen or so third-generation disciples didn't hesitate to go against the sect's orders to stop him from capturing Yin Xuanqu. In the end, Lu Ping even fought with him to cover Yin Xuanqu's escape from the North Sea. It was that battle that allowed Lu Ping to step on Sage Xian Shu's shoulders and build his reputation as the water sword deity. At this time, Tian Shu Laozu was shocked. He finally knew where the uneasiness in his heart came from. It was from the dozen or so third-generation disciples who had stopped him from capturing Yin Xianchu. Now, among the third-generation disciples of Zhenling who had the potential to advance to the Dharma stage in the future, about half of them were gathered among the dozen or so disciples from back then. He had one now, but who among Zhenling's future disciples would be able to beat him? Chapter 854. Grand Elder Tian Shu suddenly felt like he was riding a tiger, unable to back down. What was originally thought to be a heaven-sent opportunity now seemed to be a trap. However, it was also a trap. Liu Tianling Laozu could choose not to jump into it, but Tian Shu Laozu had already fallen into it. This was because the trap he had set was to force Lu Ping to leave Huangli Island. Under the situation where Liu Tianling didn't take the bait, he didn't have the face to return the Huangli Island spirit vein that he had already occupied. He could only walk to the end. Ever since Tian Shu Laozu forcefully took control of Huangli Island, Zhenling had a strange atmosphere. Tian Shu Laozu had already guessed that the reason why Liu Tianling Laozu didn't make a move was not only because she saw through his plan, but also because she wanted to leave the cause and effect for her disciple to solve. As such, not only did Zhenling no longer have any objections to Lu Ping taking control of Huangli Island, but it also caused Tian Shu Laozu to fall into a situation where he was bullying the weak. From then on, he no longer had the face to interfere with the matters of the sect. However, the problem was that even if Tian Shu Laozu threw away his pride and decided to bully the weak, could it be that Lu Ping had the ability to take back Huangli Island from him? It was said that no matter how fast Lu Ping's strength grew, there was no reason for him to break through to the Dharma stage. As long as he didn't condense his Dharma, what could he use to fight against Tian Shu Laozu? Tian Shu Laozu, who was in a hurry, seemed to realize that he had unintentionally become a tool in the hands of others, or rather, a tool to test the waters. The few Laozu in the sect seemed to have their own duties, but in reality, they were all paying attention to Huangli Island all the time. For a moment, Tian Shu Laozu actually began to look forward to Lu Ping's return. The feeling of being pushed out by the entire sect to be a benchmark for their own disciples was truly torturous. When Lu Ping emerged from the back of the Heaven Spirit Hall, the communication sword from the Heaven Spirit Mountain had already reached Tian Shu Laozu's hands. The moment Lu Ping returned to Huangli Island, the powerful counterattack of his soul had indeed caused Tian Shu Laozu, who wanted to take Lu Ping down a notch, to fail. Things continued to progress beyond Tian Shu Laozu's expectations. From Tian Shu Laozu's point of view, even if Lu Ping were to make a strong comeback, he would still need to ally with the other sects in order to seize control of Huangli Island from him. However, Tian Shu Laozu was clearly wrong again. Lu Ping's counterattack came one after another, as if he did not even consider Tian Shu Laozu's strength as a Dharma adept. What is he relying on to be so arrogant and ignorant? If he really becomes the Dharma adept Laozu in the future, who in the sect would still dare to deal with him? This person is even more arrogant than Jiang Shenlin, even more arrogant than Liu Shenling, and even more arrogant than my Shenqin. Tian Shu Laozu did not seem to care about the greetings of the few disciples outside the cave. His face was so dark that it was scary. I have to suppress him, even if I have to bear the reputation of bullying the weak. Just as Tian Shu Laozu made up his mind, the cave that he had opened up on the east coast of Huangli Island began to shake violently. This kind of violent shaking was something that even Tian Shu Laozu could not suppress in a short period of time. However, Tian Shu Laozu soon realized that the spiritual meridians that had formed under the cave were flowing back towards the center of Huangli Island, towards the cave that Lu Ping was in. To be able to change the spiritual meridians so easily, to be able to break the spiritual meridians so easily, could it be that Senior Guo Tianshan had already come to Huangli Island and was openly standing on the side that was against him? No, that's not right. Even Guo Tianshan was far from being able to change the spiritual meridians. That left only one person, Tian Kang Laozu. Zhenling, only Tian Kang Laozu had mastered the great power of moving the mountains and filling the seas to perfection, and its power could even be compared to that of an unparalleled power. Only an old man like him could change the spiritual meridians so easily. However, why would Tian Kang Laozu support Lu Ping over such a small matter? A formation, it had to be a formation. Tian Shu Laozu came to a sudden realization. After all, the Black Fox was junior sister Xuanzhen's favorite disciple. Her cultivation in formations was already at the level of a master. It was not impossible for her to set up a hidden formation that could evade my detection. Now that the Black Fox saw that her lover had returned, she had the confidence to activate the formation and wanted to take back the spiritual meridians. How could it be so easy? Tian Shu Laozu roared, and his angry roar shook the entire True Spirit Island. The entire Huangli Island was not very big. In just a short while, Tian Shu Laozu had already arrived in front of him. Just as he was about to scold Lu Ping, he saw a ray of sword light piercing through the void in front of him, heading straight for Tian Shu Laozu's eye sockets. "Boy, how dare you make the first move? How dare you?" Tian Shu Laozu was enraged. Although he was scolding Lu Ping, his heart was calm. The forest wall of woods transformed into a giant tree in front of him. Countless leaves fell from the tree and formed a green net in mid-air. After advancing to the Dharma phase, Tian Shu Laozu's protective power was even more powerful. Seeing Lu Ping's sword piercing towards him, Tian Shu Laozu wanted to show his power. He did not dodge or evade. He wanted to use the forest wall of woods to block Lu Ping's sword light. Lu Ping laughed coldly in his heart. His hand gestures became more rapid and waves of vital energy were injected into the flying sword. The sword light pierced through half of the forest wall of woods. Even Tian Shu Laozu broke out in a cold sweat. However, his protective power was still able to block Lu Ping's sudden attack. He could not help but laugh and said, "So it is Martial Nephew Lu. How dare you attack the old man? Senior sister Liu has taught a good disciple, but this is how." Before he could finish his sentence, Tian Shu Grand Elder screamed in shock. He took a few steps back, but it was too late. The other flying sword that had been hiding behind the first beam of light had caught up with him. The forest of 10,000 woods wall was broken with a crisp cracking sound. The Yi Ren sword followed like a shadow and pierced towards Tian Shu Laozu. Tian Shu Laozu was caught off guard and could only lower his head to avoid the attack. However, his hair was cut off by the flying sword. His hair was messy. The originally dignified Dharma phase Laozu lost his image in front of the shocked cultivators of Huangli Island. He looked so pathetic. "Son of a B***, you, how dare you?" Tian Shu Laozu was like a furious beast. His finger trembled as he pointed at the direction where the flying sword light came from. He let out an earth-shattering roar, but his heart was in turmoil. There was only one thought in his mind: how could this be? How could this be? How could this be? A silhouette rose from Huangli Island. Finally, someone on Huangli Island exclaimed, "It is the water sword deity, Enlightened Master Lu Shenping. Enlightened Master Lu Shenping is back. This is going to be a good show. This Lu Shenping is too domineering. He even dared to attack our sect's Laozu. Is he not afraid of being punished by the sect?" Punishment. The great Dharma phase Laozu was beaten up so miserably. If I was Junling's senior Laozu, I would not have the face to punish him. That's true. When did this water sword deity become so powerful? It looks like he is still at the core forging 9th stage. Even Dharma phase Laozu could not take advantage of him. What? Core forging 9th stage? Are you sure? 20 years ago, Enlightened Master Lu Shenping had just advanced to the core forging late stage. How could he be at the core forging 9th stage now? Tian Shu Laozu looked at Lu Ping with a complicated expression. After a long time, he said, "I didn't expect you to grow so fast. I'm afraid even the others in our sect did not expect this, right?" Lu Ping smiled. "It's not that I'm growing fast. It's just that Uncle Master has been cooped up in the North Sea for too long. Uncle Master hasn't even mastered one of his prime divine abilities. He thinks that he is one of the top cultivators in the North Sea just because he has reached the Dharma phase. He doesn't know that there are many cultivators like me who can fight against Dharma phase Laozu. Perhaps." Tian Shu Laozu held a slingshot in his hand. "But in today's battle, there must be a conclusion between us. Otherwise, We would be letting down those who set up this trap. Lu Ping sneered and said, "You're wrong again, junior martial uncle. From the beginning to the end, you were the one who took the initiative. Who was the one who secretly plotted for you or forced you to do something? A man will do what he did, and if he made a mistake, then he made a mistake. Why do you keep pushing all the blame to others? Or do you want to blame the person who took care of you for your death? Talk is useless. Let's talk after we fight." It was the same slingshot, and the same green ball of light formed on the leather cushion because of the beast tendon. Decades ago, in order to protect Yin Xianchu, Lu Ping had fought against enlightened Xianchu. Even though Lu Ping had forced enlightened Xianchu to use all his tricks, it was undeniable that Lu Ping had lost that battle. Moreover, he had lost without the slightest bit of unwillingness to accept defeat. It was only because enlightened Xianchu had realized the true intentions of the sect and purposely went easy on Lu Ping. Now that he was facing the slingshot and the green ball of light, Lu Ping could tell at a glance that the quality and power of these two weapons were no longer the same as they were decades ago. But now, as his opponent, Lu Ping's growth in power was not something Tian Shu Laozu could imagine. "Today, I will be so bold as to ask Uncle Master to leave Huang Li Island. Today, Huang Li Island no longer needs Uncle Master's protection." As soon as Lu Ping's voice fell, the green ball of light in the slingshot shot out. However, the ball of light disappeared in the air as soon as it shot out. When it suddenly appeared again, not only was it in front of Lu Ping, it was also smashing towards Lu Ping's head from the left. However, just as the ball of light appeared in front of Lu Ping, a golden light seemed to have calculated the position of the ball of light. The autumn water sword shattered the green ball of light, but the exploded ball of light suddenly turned into a sky full of green silk threads, entangling the autumn water sword layer by layer. A golden light spread from Lu Ping's hand to the autumn water sword's body. All the green silk threads entangling the sword began to wither, dry up, and turn into dust. Tian Shu Laozu's expression changed, and he cried out, "What kind of magic is this?" He waved both his hands at the same time, and countless dandelion-like silk threads appeared around Lu Ping, falling towards Lu Ping's body. It was this move again. Lu Ping sighed in his heart. Although Tian Shu Laozu's level of practice had advanced to the Dharma stage, other than the increase in power due to the increase in his level of practice, his other techniques had not improved much. Chapter 855. After all, Tian Shu Laozu was only a Dharma adept who had attained the 7th grade golden elixir. If he had not had a fortuitous encounter in his early years, how could he have attained the Dharma stage so quickly, to the point where he was almost on par with Junling's 3 truths and 4 spirits? However, the Dharma power that he had attained in the end could not be compared to the Dharma power that the 3 truths and 4 spirits had attained. Although he could not be said to be at the bottom of the early Dharma adepts, he was still one of the weaker ones. Dharma power was different from a practitioner's talent. At the beginning of a practitioner's training, those who were not very talented could still be saved through various methods. However, if the quality of the Dharma power that they attained when they entered the Dharma stage was not high enough, then it would not only affect their future progress in training, but it would also affect the Dharma power of other Dharma adepts of the same level. Lu Ping could tell that this Tian Shu Laozu's training method was definitely the same as Tian Shu Laozu's. It was the same forest wall of 10,000 trees, and the same profusion of fallen petals. This was especially so for the profusion of fallen petals. If Tian Shu Laozu had used it, Lu Ping would have no choice but to retreat. However, now that Tian Shu Laozu had used it, it was instantly destroyed by Lu Ping's flying sword and the meteoric power shield of 1,000 poisons. Lu Ping's calm expression had now become so arrogant and insufferably arrogant in the eyes of Tian Shu Laozu. This was blatant mockery. Tian Shu Laozu suddenly slapped his chest, and a green rock flew out from the space in his heart. This was Tian Shu Laozu's Dharma power. The rock raised its head to the sky and let out a shrill cry. It flapped its wings in the sky, and countless feathers once again floated down. It was the same, blossoming petals of fallen petals, but when Grand Ancestor Tian Shu cast out his avatar, the power of the blossoming petals of fallen petals was more than doubled. Lu Ping's expression finally turned serious, but only slightly. Countless green and white feather-like objects formed from spiritual qi floated down from the sky. Only Lu Ping knew that these countless feathers looked soft, but in reality, each of them weighed thousands of pounds. When these feathers faced an enemy, they were like moths to a flame, falling on the practitioner's body until they completely crushed the opponent. Truth be told, Lu Ping knew that there was another powerful aspect to this profusion of fallen petals. After the feathers fell on a cultivator's body, they would immediately grow roots to pierce into the cultivator's body, absorbing the spiritual energy within the cultivator's body to nourish the cultivator. It would consume the cultivator's primary energy and magic power, destroying the cultivator's fleshly body. In fact, it could even suck away the cultivator's body until only a withered corpse was left. It was truly a powerful skill that was both beautiful and cruel. Lu Ping spread the myriad meteoric poisons evenly across the surface of his skin. Thanks to the fact that he had absorbed several famous highly poisonous items from the world of cultivation, the quality of the myriad meteoric poisons had risen to the myriad meteoric poisons level. Once the feathers fell on Lu Ping's body, they would be corroded by the myriad meteoric poisons, incapable of piercing into Lu Ping's body. However, because Tianshu Laozu had unleashed his Dharma form, the power of the profusion of fallen petals had greatly increased. The speed at which Lu Ping's myriad meteoric poisons was far slower than the speed at which the feathers fell on his body. Each of the feathers had a weight of thousands of pounds. If it were not for the fact that Lu Ping had paid attention to the improvement of his fleshly body since a long time ago and had swallowed a lot of pills that were used to improve the quality of his fleshly body, perhaps he would not have been able to withstand the power of this skill. For a moment, Tianshu Laozu had the upper hand. However, he could not bring himself to feel proud at all. All he could do was coldly say, "Since you are senior sister Tianling's disciple, I will not punish you for disrespecting your elders. Just return to Tianling Mountain and beg for forgiveness from senior sister Tianling." As soon as Grand Ancestor Tianshu finished speaking, a pitch-black flame suddenly rose from Lu Ping's body. The flickering flame looked like a dancing demon that surrounded Lu Ping. From afar, Lu Ping looked like a demonic cultivator hiding in a black fog. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. While Tianshu Laozu was in a daze, the black flame suddenly spread upwards. One by one, the feathers that were falling towards Lu Ping turned into a spiritual flame in the sky. Tianshu Laozu turned pale with fright. This myriad fallen petals' divine power used a cultivator's true energy as a guide, condensing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to form this scene of endless falling petals. It was originally the most difficult skill to resolve, but he did not expect that his opponent not only had the myriad poison meteorite energy, which was a rare defensive technique in the cultivation world, but also this strange black flame, which could actually use spiritual energy as firewood. The thicker the spiritual energy, the more intense the burning would be. Tianshu Laozu could clearly feel that the true energy that was attached to the petals was rapidly dissipating due to the burning of this strange black flame. This black flame was a strange item that Lu Ping had obtained in his early years, called the Dark Prison Poisonous Flame. Although the quality of this flame was not as good as the myriad poison paste, which was known as the mother of all poisons, in order to improve its quality, it still needed to absorb a large amount of poisonous energy through the burning flame. In the past, when the secret burial ground was opened, the myriad poison paste gathered the poisonous energy inside and condensed many drops of myriad wonder dew, which greatly improved the quality of the dark prison poisonous flame. Both the myriad poison paste and the dark prison poisonous flame could be regarded as the nemesis of Tianshu Laozu's myriad fallen petals' divine power. Naturally, the myriad poison paste was the best at restraining it. However, the myriad poison meteorite energy was extremely difficult to control, while the myriad poison meteorite energy was only a defensive technique. It was more than enough to defend, but not enough to attack. Although the quality of the dark prison poisonous flame was slightly inferior to the myriad poison paste, it was much easier to control than the latter. Moreover, the dark prison poisonous flame was originally a violent fire seed, so it was most convenient for Lu Ping to use it to neutralize Tianshu Laozu's divine power. Just as Lu Ping and Tianshu Laozu were fighting, A few rays of light rose from the cave dwelling that Tianshu Laozu had opened on the east coast of Huangli Island. They flew toward Lu Ping's cave dwelling with a murderous aura. Among the rays of light, Yuan Xuanzhan took the lead, his eyes shining with excitement. He had been waiting for this moment for far too long. Previously, because Tianshu Laozu was worried about his reputation, he did not want to lose control of Lu Ping's cave dwelling and the island's protective formation. But this time, Lu Shenping actually dared to openly provoke Tianshu Laozu. This gave Yuan Xuanzhan a reason to take back control of Huangli Island in one fell swoop. Of course, this was only an excuse Yuan Xuanzhan could use to suppress Lu Ping. It could also be used to cover up the thrill of revenge, hidden deep in Yuan Xuanzhan's heart after being repeatedly humiliated by Lu Ping. Lu Ping's rise was too fast, so fast that Yuan Xuanzhan, who was also a third-generation disciple, felt despair. He knew that if he wanted to take revenge on Lu Shenping, he would never be able to surpass him no matter how hard he worked. As for the Yuan family, it was just a cultivation family that depended on Junling. In the past, the Yuan family could be said to be a fence-sitter, waiting for the right price between Junling and Xianling sect. But now, the Yuan family could only obediently rely on Junling's whims to survive. Especially when Lu Ping went missing in the Beast Tide, his teacher, Reverend Liu Xianling, caused havoc in the Yuan family. He single-handedly beat the Yuan family's core forging perfected masters into hiding in the family's ancestral hall, not daring to show their faces. Wasn't that also a warning to Junling? Otherwise, why didn't Reverend Xianshu, who was also a second-generation disciple of the Yuan family and had always been at odds with Reverend Liu Xianling to help the Yuan family? Yuan Xuanzhan had already thought it through. The Yuan family was ultimately not presentable. If they wanted to become a giant, they could only rely on Junling and rely on the sect's resources to rise. But if they wanted to deal with Lu Shenping, they would have to rely on a righteous cause. They would also need the help of Junling's higher-ups, Laozu. Only then would they be able to suppress Lu Xuanping's arrogance. Yuan Xuanzhan had some foresight. He knew that with Lu Ping's strength and influence in Junling, he was almost invincible among those below the Dharma adept level. Even if there were people who could match him, they would definitely not stand up and challenge the sect leader's disciple. Moreover, this water sword deity was Junling's third Grandmaster Alchemist. Who would offend a Grandmaster Alchemist for no reason, let alone a Grandmaster Alchemist? Coincidentally, at this time, his uncle had come out of seclusion and become Junling's second Dharma adept, Laozu. His uncle had always been at odds with Junling's sect leader, and this immediately gave Yuan Xuanzhan hope. As expected, Tianshu Laozu, who was opposed to Junling's centralization of power, took advantage of Tianqin Laozu's time to come out of seclusion to take charge of Huangli Island. The biggest disagreement between Tianshu Laozu and Tianling Laozu was because they had a major disagreement on the development of Junling. Nearly 100 years ago, Reverend Liu Xianling, who was in charge of Junling sect's affairs, had a fierce conflict with Reverend Xianshu. However, at that time, Reverend Xianshu seized the opportunity and pushed Reverend Liu Xianling down from his position as the sect's deacon. Liu Tianling Laozu was a supporter of Junling's centralization of power. He believed that only by concentrating Junling's power in the hands of the sect leader, Junling's limited resources could be used to quickly cultivate disciples with potential and increase Junling's strength. At the same time, in the face of the approaching Mara's disaster, only the sect leader could gather enough power to resist Mara's disaster and quickly take measures according to the development of the situation. This way, Junling's strongest power could be used to minimize the losses. Tianshu Laozu, on the other hand, was a supporter of Junling's balance of power. At the same time, he was also a supporter of Junling's tens of thousands of years of inheritance. What he valued more was the balance and restriction of power in Junling's inheritance and development. He believed that the establishment of a sect leader would greatly damage Junling's inheritance system. Without restriction and supervision, a sect leader with great power could easily cause the formation of unfair events. Huangli Island was the embodiment of this unfairness. As the last disciple of the sect leader, How could a cultivator who had only cultivated for a little more than 100 years be able to accumulate such a large foundation in the isolated Huangli Island? Did he rely on his own strength? Huangli Island had a large amount of resources for training. The small Huangli Island's spirit vein had reached the middle rank. Even most of the medium-sized islands couldn't catch up. Why didn't the sect take back the spirit vein? Was it because he was the sect leader's disciple? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.